Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Tuesday, August 24th, 2021. We are here for a school board workshop. The time is 1:05. The workshop today is to discuss with the superintendent search. We will have Ray and Associates will be here to conduct this for us, and I will be turning this over to Mr. Collins from Ray and Associates, and he will run us through the agenda for today. Also, I would please ask, today is our first time that we're trying this new way of communication, seeing one another, and I know that they are not seeing who we are. So if we have a question for, whether it be Karen, Steve, Molly, Mike, who obviously can see us because he's here with us, please state your name so they know who exactly is speaking and who is exactly asking the question. So with that, yes, Ms. Patrica?
Chris Patrica, I had reached out to the superintendent's office and the board attorney's office this morning to ask if we could, during good of the order, receive an update from the superintendent regarding COVID conditions in the district. And I didn't know whether we needed to move good of the order to a different part of the agenda to accommodate Dr. Savage's schedule. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. And we will continue on the agenda as we have it. And at such time, when good of the order comes, we will then ask for him to come and give us an update.
Excellent. Thank you.
And then Ms. Stillwell is joining us today. She's been with us all along and trying to make sure that keep us together, and I really appreciate her, and today she is here with us as well. So she will be here as well afterwards, that if we have some questions that might be able to be answered. So in saying that, Mr. Collins, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to you so you can begin the process. And thank you for being here, for flying in here and being here with us.
Now, thank you, President Jordan, members of the board. A pleasure to be back with you. Myself and the team were obviously delighted to be here before. I think there are a couple of faces that were on the phone last time, so for having this be the first time that we see one another again, thank you. We are honored and privileged to have been selected. We are very excited to get started. This is step one, as one would say. To refresh everybody's memory in a minute, I'm going to ask my colleagues, Dr. Karen Hall, Dr. Steve Cochran, as well as our Senior Vice President, Molly Schwartzoff, to introduce themselves very briefly, so just as a fresh reminder. Before we get started on that, though, is that I would just like to share with you at least our view of the intent and purpose of today. And that is that we are really setting the procedural and timeline stage. This isn't conversation about any candidates, about any building of profiling or any of those things. There's certain process things we'll touch on, but we hope our conversation stays completely focused on the procedural side of what we hope to accomplish and what we said we would do with you and for you, and also to make sure that those couple of things that you're going to need, because you can't do it in a workshop, that you're going to need to decide fairly readily, are very clear to you, and also that the timeline makes sense, and that you look hard on your calendar, because once this train leaves the station, it is very, very helpful that we stay on time and on task. And the real reason is because of its effect also on candidates, not only in this region and in Florida, but around the country, which is why you hired us, was to bring you that panorama. And in saying that is that you really sit right at this moment in an ideal time, because you're actually slightly ahead of the curve, because most of these meetings will start to occur in districts in the October-November timeframe, and you're already here, which in all honesty, given this year and the number of openings and the number of searches that we believe are about to come forth, because we never had a quiet summer, I can assure you that being here now is extremely helpful to you. Whether your selectee is able for some reason to start earlier or not till July 1 is very secondary. The most important piece you have is to go through this process on a sustained calendar so that you can make your selection as appropriate in that optimal time frame. And then once the contract is addressed, you then can look at start times, which will be helpful. In the meantime, you have an interim superintendent, and it seems like the district is running just fine. So from that point, you still will be in very good and functional hands for your new leader to take over. So, Madam President, I just wanted to kind of set the stage, if that's agreeable. One last thing before our colleagues say hello to you is that our hope today is that the bulk of the information we're going to cover will actually be led by Molly, because she really not only has the procedural documents in her possession and will share, but also because Molly is as young as she is, she's the senior status of all of your team here. Actually has helped modify and create some of these documents from back in time, is most familiar with them, and she will tell you there's certain parts of this she really, really likes. And so with that asset, we'll move forward. Once she presents something, I'll just facilitate questions, and whether I answer, Molly answers, Steve answers, or Karen. In other words, we'll just facilitate your responses as you need, and we'll try to keep this in a very orderly, concise fashion from our standpoint, and try not to make this a long, drawn-out afternoon for any of you.
Thank you.
So if you're ready, President Jordan,
Yes,
we're just
please.
going to go ahead and proceed. So Molly, your first slide is up there. If you'd like to get us started, that'd be, let's do introductions real
Introduction,
quickly. So go ahead, Molly, why don't you start, and then we'll go to Steve and Karen.
Hi, everybody. My name is Molly Sforzoff, and as Mike mentioned, I am the Senior Vice President with Rain Associates. I am thrilled to be here with you all. I do apologize. You will hear a little person in the background. I'm working from home for the next 2 days before preschool starts, so you might hear a little person in the background, so I do apologize if you do. I'll let Dr. Hall and Dr. Cochran introduce themselves here shortly. I just wanted to tell you all thank you, and I am just so excited to work with you all to help you find your next superintendent.
Thank you, Molly. It is an honor to see you all again and work with you. This is, again, Karen Hall, and I'm coming from St. Louis, Missouri, recently retired superintendent from St. Louis County, and I recently pivoted to education in three ways, actually. I'm now an assistant professor at St. Louis University in the Ed Leadership Program. I also am a regional supervisor for the Missouri Department of Education over 9 school districts in St. Louis County. And I have my own consulting firm, RISE, Coaching and Consulting, to support equity-focused leadership for administrators and inspiring administrators. So again, it is an honor to work with you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am also incredibly excited to be a part of this process with the board and with the community, and to see everyone again. My name is Steve Cochran. I'm an associate with Ray & Associates and a former superintendent of the Princeton Public Schools. And I've just begun as an executive director of a nonprofit, the Institute for Humane Education. So once again, thrilled to be back with our team and back with all of you in doing the important work of finding the next leader of your school district.
Okay, Molly.
All right, we're going to start going through these items. I know that I think everybody has these electronically, but we'll just go through them very quickly. I promise this meeting will be painless. The only thing that you will catch me being a major stickler on is the timeline. We're going to go over some dates, and we're going to narrow down when meetings are happening so that your stakeholders know, so that your candidates know, and so that you all know what's happening throughout every step of the search. So once we get on that, when we finalize it, it will be stamped as approved, and it will be set in stone, essentially. So with that being said, we're just going to go through these items one by one. The first one is discuss the procedures for reimbursement of candidate travel expenses by the district. Obviously, we don't know what this lovely pandemic is that we've all been having to deal with for the last gosh, 10 years, it seems like. But we need to start thinking about what it's going to look like when the candidates are coming for the interview process. So for the first round, a lot of districts have been doing that virtually, just depending on the pandemic and where the numbers are at as far as travel, logistics, and what your stakeholders are comfortable with. It's completely up to you guys. We have quite a bit of time between now and when that happens. But for sure, the second round of interviews, we do want to see those in person because this will be your top 2 or top 3 finalists with ultimately one that you'll be hiring. So you do want to shake their hand, get to know them, see them face to face. So with that being said, are you guys okay with reimbursing the candidate travel expense for either both first and second, or at least second if that's the only time they travel?
And Ms. Dupree-Bruno, if you will, we cannot vote on any of this because this is not an action meeting. So can you address that?
So I'm trying to follow. You're going through the list. So just so you know, they can't take a formal vote on any of the matters. That has to be done during an action meeting. If you want to have their thoughts, they can share that with you, but they cannot, as a board, take a formal vote.
You guys tell me, would you prefer that just for time's sake that we go through this and tell you our recommendations, or do we want to have a discussion?
If recommendations?
I'm thinking both, because they give their recommendations and we ask questions. And also, just a thought, the things that they present that we have to do a hard vote on, perhaps we can mark them, put them in a list, and at our next voting meeting, we can bring the list ahead to say, this is what we're discussing.
Yeah, and if I may, Board Member Giddens, that's what we've discussed actually this morning as well, is that we will leave those things that actually need vote, you will do at your next meeting. You'll share them. We just want to make sure that any questions that you have regarding these items or our recommendations become clear. So our recommendations would always be, in the case of this first one, that you would reimburse your, what I call your semi-finalists, or the people you're going to interview, both at the first stage of interviews and at the second stage. So that would be our recommendation. The only question we have is we have no idea whether you'll be able to have a second stage.
Could you repeat your recommendation, please? I didn't hear the beginning part.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the recommendation is that if you bring candidates in both for the first round interviews and the second round interviews, that you reimburse them for their travel. The fact of the matter is their availability to travel will be determined by all those other factors that none of us have any control over. But if you want to formalize that, you'll have to do it at the next meeting. So that might be one of those that you star Member Gittens as part of your, recommendation of how to proceed.
Thank you. Is there questions regarding that? Ms. Vaughn?
I just wanted to express my opinion that I feel like for the first round, regardless of what is happening with COVID, we're going to want to see as many as possible of the contenders, and to keep it from getting, very extremely expensive, I would say do the online for the first round, but by all means, that once we narrow it down to 2 or 3, that we need to see those people absolutely in person and reimburse.
And if I could add one footnote, Mr. Member Giddens, just 1 second, is that we have done over 50 searches all online of the last 18 months, but in almost all of those cases, particularly in the last 6 months, the semifinals, as I would call them, your first round of interviews, were done online, and all cases the finalists came in even during the past 6 to 8 months. Because in all honesty, they want to see you as much as you want to see them.
Right. So I'm very comfortable with that.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. And Ms. Gittens, you had?
No, that was what I agree with that we move this forward as a motion that we will reimburse based on the travel, accommodations at the time, that the first round be digital and the second round being face-to-face.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Kittens. Anybody else have any comments on that? You're okay with that? Ms. Fisher, did you?
I agree.
And Ms. Patrica? Okay, thank you. So we have that first round, Zoom or online, second, bring in, okay.
Right, wonderful. And the next document that I'm going to pull up is the timeline. There's two of them that you'll notice. One was a 60-day and one was a 30-day. I'm going to pull up the 60-day because that is the one that we're going to be recommending to the board that we would like to discuss. And we'll briefly go over the 30-day option while the 60 days up, just so you can see the difference between the two. But I'll go ahead and pull that up now.
And Molly, I will tell you that on some of these, on the first one, there's quite a few of them that we have board workshops or briefings on already.
That's the 30 day, so that's only the 30.
So you'll see the first date, everything highlighted in yellow is where we would want board involvement. And you'll see today's the very first meeting. We're planning with the board, and we'll start talking about individual board interviews. And all that's going to consist of is me asking your team to send me your contact information with either your email or your cell phone number, whichever your preference. And then either myself, Steve, Karen, or Mike will be reaching out to you to conduct a one-on-one board interview. Those take about 45 minutes. We'll schedule them around whatever works best for your personal and work schedule. And it's just simply to get to know you a little bit better and for you to get to know us a little bit better. And if there's questions that you don't feel comfortable asking in a forum, you can certainly do so. Everything does stay confidential between yourself and the team. So we'll be working on getting those set up probably tomorrow, if not later in the week. Once we get those contact information, we'll start doing that. Then you'll notice that tomorrow we're going to start notifying all of our associates and other contacts of the vacancy coming up. We'll also begin preparing information for the district promotional flyer or job description and the online application form. We'll get to the flyer a little bit later, but we do want to go through and kind of have an idea of what you're looking for as far as the flyer, if you want us to do it, if you have somebody in-house to do it. I believe you have somebody in-house, but I don't know that for certain. Then coming up in September, we wanted to get past Labor Day, but on September 7th, we would start wanting to reach out to your constituents and your stakeholders for input meetings. And those right now we have scheduled for the 21st and 22nd. You'll notice that is not in yellow. We cannot tell you all not to come to these forums and not to participate in these meetings, but we strongly advise that board members do not participate. We want your stakeholders to feel comfortable and that they can speak freely. These stakeholders are going to consist of your teachers, your administrators, your parents, your students, your support staff, and even non-parent community members. And then anyone else that you feel should be included in this, we would just ask between now and the 7th, you start thinking about and generating those ideas, and we get a schedule kind of put in place for the 21st and the 22nd. With this being said, we would have the online survey link that would open up on the 7th of September, and it would go until October 7th. Now, pre-COVID, we used to have these surveys open for about 2 weeks. But with everything else going on and everything else that this world is kind of carrying that's a little heavy, we like to give about a month now. It gives people time to really digest, think about what they want to do, put their answers in there. If they identify top 10 qualities, but if then at the bottom, there is a text box where they can put in additional comments or thoughts. So we really feel that giving them a month, especially with school getting started, trying to find a new routine with everything, things constantly changing, it's the best way to give everybody ample opportunity to participate. And that's really what this is all about. We would then have those meetings that we mentioned on the 21st and 22nd with your stakeholders. The survey would be due on October 7th, and that would be at 8 a.m. We would have everything prepared with the flyer, either whether it be us internal or if you guys have somebody in the district. We would have everything ready to roll aside from those top 10 qualities. So once we got that deadline,
Can you send her a message?
I would tally all the data.
Can you send her a message?
And then you would have that draft to look at.
Molly, can you hear me?
Molly, can you stop for 1 second? There are a couple of questions. I know you want to go through it, but let.
I can't see anybody.
I know.
No, we
I
know
you can.
that. We know that. Who had the question, please?
I thought I heard
Oh.
them there because I have one as well.
Ms. Vaughn, and then Ms. Gittens. Attorney Bruno. May I ask Attorney Bruno first, and then I'll come back to you, Ms. Vaughn, and then Ms. Gittens? Please.
I just had a comment with regards to the meetings with the constituent and stakeholders. Just a reminder, of course, you have your sunshine requirements, so that's all I was trying to make sure you guys will remember that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Vaughn?
I feel like 2 days is kind of a narrow window on this. I would propose, I mean, this is a huge district, so we have a lot of people that we're going to be pulling from, and I'm wondering if we can't have more days than just the meetings on the 21st and the 22nd.
Absolutely. What I would recommend is that we put the schedule together, get an idea of how many groups you want to invite, but also keep in mind that there's 4 members on your team, so we can, all 4 of us can be doing a meeting consecutively. So there could be 4 meetings happening at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever it may be. But once we get an idea of what those groups look like, if there needs to be more days added, we can absolutely do that.
Thank you, Molly. Ms. Gittens?
Okay, so, hi, Molly, and thank you. Looking at the schedule and knowing that there are already some of the times, especially the yellow, that we're supposed to be involved, that we've already got meetings set. So I kind of look at this like an accordion, so to speak, that if we have to add more meetings for the community, for example, or if we need to shift one because we already have a meeting set on that day, it kind of expands and pushes us into the future. Am I correct with that?
Yes and no. We can certainly move these dates either a day forward, day backwards, or, you know, if we need to combine some of them, we certainly can. Like when we get to the meeting on the 12th to talk about the promotional flyer and go over the survey data. It's my favorite meeting. I am a complete numbers nerd. There's no other way to say it. I'm just a numbers nerd, but it's all data. There's no opinions. There's no personal bias. So that meeting could almost be where we send you all the data prior. And if you want to have a meeting, we certainly can. You may not want to. The meetings with the stakeholders and the constituent groups is highlighted on the 21st and the 22nd. The only reason why that's highlighted is if a board member wants to open a meeting and thank people for being there. But it's not where you have to sit and listen. We would actually prefer that you all are not sitting there and observing or listening. But that's just an optional if you want to be there to welcome people and thank them for joining. So things like that, we're very flexible. Does that help answer your question a little bit?
But I guess what I'm saying is, if things have to be shifted, well, let me put it like this. In our contract with you, are we, I don't even know how many weeks this is, but are we confined to a certain number of weeks or a certain amount of time based on the contract? Or if this expands past 1/17/22, is that an issue with the contract?
No, on our end, absolutely not. We are here until you guys have a superintendent that you're satisfied with.
Thank you, Molly. Go ahead, please.
All right, that puts us at, I think, we left it at the flyer due. We talked about the meeting on the 12th. It's all data. It's all in a spreadsheet. It's one of my favorite meetings just because it is so very black and white. There's no gray, which is one of my favorites. But it's a meeting that a lot of districts, once they get the information, they say we don't need to have a meeting because it's all data. It doesn't need to be discussed. It's pretty straightforward. So that's an optional. So then we would go ahead and start recruiting October 13th. Right now I've got it set for a 60-day recruitment, so that'll put us at mid-December. The reason why we're doing that is the 2 biggest times that we see traffic on our website is Thanksgiving and Christmas. So right now we would be getting ahead of the curve with this timeline, and you would be getting that Thanksgiving break and that Thanksgiving traffic, but still getting things moving prior to Christmas. So you would still have prime candidates. You'd still have prime pick, essentially. I hate saying that, but there's no other really way to say it. So that will put us at the deadline of December 13th. My team and I would be screening and vetting and reviewing candidates, doing phone interviews, checking references, doing all that fun stuff to do our due diligence. And then we would want to be presenting candidates to you on January 4th. This is the big meeting. This is the one that's going to be about 4 hours long, and where you're going to be presented candidates, and you will be identifying who you want to interview. So this is the one meeting that this is the big lights in Vegas, Vegas lights all around it, that we don't want to change the date, that we would want to make sure everybody's on their calendar and can be available and give it due attention that's needed. Are there any questions on that meeting?
Anybody have any, Ms. Gittens?
I'm sorry. So you said everything else can shift around, but January 4th has to stay? Or are you saying that that particular date, once we figure what that date is, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Once we narrow down this timeline and we pick a date, whatever that date may be for the semi-meeting, and that's what we call it, as the semi-meeting, we don't want to change it, because candidates are going to be asking, once that deadline hits, they're going to be calling or asking myself or my team and saying, what's the next step? And we need to be able to tell them that you will hear one way or another by the end of business on the 4th. Whatever that date may be. We need to keep candidates in the loop on what they can expect.
Here is to look at what you have laid before us, and these are the dates that we are wanting to make sure. That's why we've asked everybody to bring their calendars to look at that, because I know as far as the district is concerned, just the district, I don't know about other people's personal calendars, the only one that I've seen that had any kind of conflicts was the 9/21 and 22, but you already stated that that's something that you really did not care for us to be at anyway. So in looking at all the other dates and looking at the calendar, I know there is like a FSB, there's some training, but that does not hinder anything that you have on here because we're the yellow. So, and what Molly's trying to do today is for us to look at these dates and say, yes, these dates are good, and then they're trying to put those dates to be date certain, so that way they can move forward with this. If, God forbid, something happens that a date has to change, then that's okay. But today we're here to try to solidify these dates right here as the dates that we are moving on. Is that correct, Molly?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. And like I said, on the 21st and 22nd, if you guys have a board member, if somebody wants to just simply jump on the screen or jump on the stage and say, on behalf of the board, thank you for coming, that's all it would be. Sometimes we have board members that do that. Sometimes we have board, like district reps that do it. And I hate saying it, but because she's been so helpful and she's on here and I see her name, Lizette, maybe somebody like that, LaTanya, maybe somebody like that, whoever's available. And sometimes districts say, nope, we want to be hands off. We want our community to feel comfortable with you guys as the outside source. So that's totally fine too. There's no right or wrong.
Was on the same page on what you are trying to get to us. Is there any other questions? Ms. Giovanelli and then Ms. Patrica.
I have a couple questions regarding the stakeholder meetings. How many do you usually do in the 1 or 2 days? And do you have evening meetings? I mean, so what's kind of the schedule, the plan?
Absolutely. So we have a couple of sample schedules that I'd be more than happy to send out once we wrap this up. But typically we have what we call our foundation groups. And typically there may be multiples of these groups too. But you've got your parents, your teachers, your students, your administrators, your support staff, and then non-parent community members. And then in addition to that, we would recommend that you do a morning forum and an evening forum where it's open. So if somebody doesn't have time to be at the teacher meeting as a teacher, he or she can still come to this forum either in the evening or in the morning on both days, so that people can feel that they had adequate time to share their thoughts. That's just the foundation group. We've had some districts want religious leaders involved. They wanted to bring in, NAACP. They've had different groups that they want to bring in. We will adjust to what you feel that your community needs to see. But those groups that I mentioned are simply the foundation groups that we call them.
If I may add, Molly, Board Member Giovanelli, is that typically a district of your size, more than likely when you total these all up, you're in the teens. I don't know that you get to 20, and those of you that remember when you asked how many, I did put out there that the most I've ever been involved in, and I don't want to share this number, but it was 31. But they also had too many smaller individual group meetings, to tell you the truth. But you have your general communities, your general parents, your general, and then you will have those that are very important to you, whether those are business leaders, as Molly started to point out. There are some constituent groups or representative groups. I mean, this is a big county. So as you see fit, we will accommodate. The real plus of the four of us, as Molly pointed out, we don't do too many together, and only the large ones, so we're all going at the same time, and we envision these things go anywhere from 8 in the morning through 9 o'clock at night by the time they conclude. So that's why 2 days isn't quite as confining as it looks at the moment. I don't know that I've ever done one longer than 2.5 days, but that doesn't mean we wouldn't. I just want you to feel that the process is open, and it needs to also be built so that it's constructive. Because the other thing that's not as helpful is a bunch of meetings that have 3 people at them. Right. We want enough stimulation in the audience from like groups that they actually encourage each other. Keep in mind that every group has the same questions. There's an entire tested and ethical process to this so that nobody gets different treatment. And we treat them basically as you've all been part of focus groups. They just could be real large focus groups. But the questions are all the same for every single group. So all those things, and we're happy to share those and review. You can review them and ask questions. I just wanted you to know there's not only a structure from a timeline, there's a structure and a pattern about what we believe our experience says is the best for your entire community in making their participation, and most importantly, legitimate. What they tell you, we will summarize, you will get. As I was just sharing, that one of the biggest advantages of particularly the survey is not just the profile elements, which are 31 in the community, everybody that responds is asked to pick their favorite 10. So that's good data. That comment section could be valuable to you for a year. It almost becomes like this, it almost becomes a free poll. So we encourage you to use that. And when we talk about engaging the finalists, which is another part of what we consider legitimate community participation, that comment section is invaluable not only to you, but whoever you select, that becomes invaluable to them. So we hope this has multiple benefits, and also, in all honesty, given all the trials and tribulations of these last 2 years, that this work becomes somewhat of a unifying and capturing experience for all involved. So we hope this is 1 + 1 is 3. Sorry, Molly, I didn't mean to hold this up.
No, thank you so much, Mr. Collins, for elaborating on that. And Ms. Giovanelli,
I just have
please.
2 more with that. So do you usually record these for others to watch? And then how would the hiring committee, if we had a hiring committee, how is that incorporated into this part of the process, the stakeholder process?
Well, so the data that we provide you that becomes a summary for your profile, this is the front end of the engagement, is based on the interviews of each of you, and we provide themes of those. We don't get into details of every conversation. The second thing is that overall survey that we hope thousands participate in, and that's the point of it. And then there's a summary of these focus groups, and what are those tendencies, what are those profile elements that have surfaced in most or all of the groups. In terms of the specific details of each, no, because that's not the point of them. This is to help you say, here's what the Lee County School District is saying that they're looking for in their next superintendent, in their next leader. And that becomes something that goes in the flyer, it's in the recruitment, it's something that we actually use as an evaluative piece as we screen candidates to bring to you. And then it's a little different with a little more direct contact when we get to the participation with the finalists. And we can get to that when we get there in the timeline, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Malley, is that, okay, Ms. Patrica?
I'm just wondering about specific dates and times. Will I discuss that with the chair if I have a conflict on this schedule? Like, how do I, so I just work through the board attorney afterwards and make sure? Anyone?
Mr. Preborn? As far as so this, you're talking about the schedule that we have right now?
Yeah, like on the 12th, we would typically meet at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I have to give a presentation to a Rotary Club for lunch that day. So I would want to meet earlier in the day or later in the day.
Yeah, that's fine.
So those are the kinds of things. When do we talk about those?
I think that's a discussion you all have and inform us of what's the best time and that date.
Okay.
We're happy to be accommodating. We don't see that as an issue.
Right, so I see on here that we have, that's a scheduled date, but the time is not on here. So yes, we
Right.
can definitely
Correct.
look at that. We'll look at everybody's schedule. Thank you. Ms. Gittens?
Did anyone else before I speak?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. On the public comment, two things. Before we send the survey out, before you send out the survey, right, what is your process for educating the public as to what this is, what it means, and what it's all about? Besides just the introduction of the survey, is there some type of, educating of that and something we can put on of course we can put on our webpage as well. And along with that, is there ever, you talk about the meetings like on the 21st and 22nd. Are there also options to do Zoom meetings or something else in conjunction? And Molly was saying, all day they're doing different things. So they may do, you may do a face-to-face at 9 and then a Zoom meeting at 12. Is that what you're looking at?
So what we are proposing is essentially be a hybrid, where there may be some in-person optional, but with also a Zoom optional as well. Just for those folks that either their schedule doesn't allow them to leave the home or leave the office, or they're not comfortable, and for those folks that do feel comfortable. As for the education on it, there's a letter that goes out, and you guys can post it on your website. You can post it ahead of time, or you can post it the day of the survey. It's nothing too deep because it's pretty self-explanatory. Once you see it, you'll understand kind of what we're talking about, and I'd be more than happy to get that to the board a couple days in advance so that you all could see the letter. But we would recommend posting that little intro up on your website with the link below it.
And I want to ask, Ms. Gittens, you stated public comments. You were referring to the stakeholders' input meetings?
Yes.
When you, okay.
I'm sorry.
I just want to make
Yes,
sure
on
that
the-
that's what you were speaking on.
On the 21st and 22nd.
Okay,
And
thank
in
you.
any of it, actually, we will have a group of stakeholders that are familiar with doing this, and then we'll have a large amount that don't have a clue, and because they have a clue, the concern is, will they participate, and then will we have a equitable response rate?
Gotcha. Thank you. Is there any other, Ms. Vaughn?
Just to follow up on that. Sorry, I don't mean to cut over on you. We'll be doing weekly updates while that survey is live. So every Friday, either I can send it to Debbie Jordan, to Lizette, to Latanya, whoever you all designate as that person, send you an update and let you know what your teacher group looks like, what's your support, what's your admin, your students, your parents. You can kind of keep an idea on that. And I'll be the first one, honestly, if I don't see numbers where they need to be, saying, hey, we need to do another push. We need to maybe explain this better, but we need to get this out more. So you'll be getting a weekly update on those numbers as well.
Thank you, Molly. Ms. Vaughn has a question.
Yeah, two things. We have a large Hispanic population, and will the surveys be available and in conjunction with that, especially when I would say with parent meetings, if not somebody who's bilingual, perhaps certain meetings or especially parent meetings with interpreters on site, even that we supply. How will that?
No, go ahead, Molly.
Yeah, so absolutely. So the survey we can do in any language. Dr. Karen Hall was with me and we did Columbia, Missouri, and they gave me a doozy of a list, but we got them. We got every language. So if it's something even besides Spanish that you guys have, you have a population that you want to make sure that they feel included, you just let me know and I will make sure to get that translated for you. As far as having translators, that would be an excellent idea. Sometimes I've had districts that put out kind of a mini survey, or they know how many people to expect that maybe English isn't their first language, to prepare for that. Some districts just have them readily available, but absolutely, I think that it would be something beneficial in your district.
Yeah, Ms. Vaughn, we do have translators in our district, so and they were at those other meetings that we held, so that's a great idea.
That's what I was thinking, and especially, I would say, with the parent
great
meetings.
idea.
And then the other thing is, okay, so you mentioned, and I know I've seen this list somewhere else, the foundation groups, parents, teachers, students, admin, non-parent constituents, that sort of thing. We probably, I'm going to say we do have some like special interest groups, let's say, in the community. How are these formed? Is it we just say, okay, we know we have, and we generate a list beyond the foundation groups, or do we have allow groups to say, well, we would like one? And the only problem I see with that is, and I'm sure you've dealt with it, is that if it's just a special interest group, it's likely that the responses will be skewed a certain way. So how do you form these, basically, how do you form the other groups beside the foundation groups? And do you usually accept requests from special interest groups that they would like their own focus group?
Go ahead, you first, Molly.
What we would typically do with a district of your size is we would ask each board member, we would give a date. Like right now we're at the 24th, we're looking at having those on the 21st. I would ask that everybody get me a list, or if you prefer to send your list to Lizette or LaTanya, whoever, send your list by like the 5th or the 6th or even the 7th. We would just set a hard date, internal date of you to submit your list. And then we could go through and where there's duplicates, combine them, and get a better idea of what the groups would look like for the final schedule.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions? Ms. Patrica?
Are you looking for direction from us as to which we prefer, the 30 or 60 day? Is that what you're looking for?
As soon as we get through this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so really the only thing we need to talk about is the first round of interviews is on the 10th. We have it listed as a week of because we don't know how many candidates you will ultimately select. So we just ask that everybody, you don't have to block off that entire week or take that week off of vacation from work, but just have it in the back of your brain that you may have interviews. You know, you could have 2 for 3 different days. You could have 4 in one day and 2 in another. You know, there's so many different ways to do it. So we just have it listed as a week of just because we don't know how many candidates ultimately there will be. And obviously, if they're virtual, it'll be much easier to do, you know, these 1-hour interviews. You could do several a day or however you wanted to do it. When we get down to the second round of interviews, we have that as a week of the 17th. Again, for the same reason. You know, if there's 3 candidates, for example, you could certainly do all 3 in one day. It's a very long day, but you can do it. Or you can do 1 per day. But it may depend on where they're coming from, what this pandemic is doing. There's so many different factors. So that's why we have it listed as the week of right now, just so that you can have it mentally in the back of your brain that that week I may have some things popping up as far as the superintendent search. Now, as compared to the 30-day timeline, the real only difference is the recruitment time. It goes from 60 days to 30 days. So you do wrap up sooner, but I would not recommend it. Right now, you have the luxury of time on your side, and this timeline gets you ahead of the real high crazy time. So you get the peak candidate, but you're hitting all those peak recruitment times, and you're not rushing anything. And that's the biggest mistake I see boards make, is you start rushing. Your stakeholders feel rushed, your candidates feel rushed, you all feel rushed. Internally, myself and my team feel rushed. It's just a bad mix. So the 60-day really takes that stress off of you all as a board, your candidates, your stakeholders, and it puts you in a great place towards that mid-January to have a final candidate and have them identified to start the next school year.
Questions right now? Nope. Okay. You have the floor.
Okay, awesome. So then the next document that we want to pull up is we're going to be talking about, well, I guess the next thing we can talk about is that 31 qualities meeting that we addressed a little bit earlier. That's that data-driven meeting. That's my favorite. And I would love to see you guys, but is that something that you would prefer, just to get the data in front of you? Or would you like to have an actual meeting for that? On the topic for discussion is item number 3.
Ask a question.
Ms. Patrica?
Do we need to take any action based on the data that comes out of that, or is it just a matter of receiving, comprehending, and digesting it?
So we would give you a recommendation of the top 10 qualities identified by that survey. It's black and white, so it takes them from each group. So your teacher group, your student group, et cetera, it ranks them. So then you get to see your board top 10 versus your stakeholder top 10. So we would just have our top 10 recommendations included in that.
And then do we have to make a decision based on those recommendations? Are they included as part of the profile? Like, what's our action based on that?
They actually become the profile elements.
Okay.
That go with everything. So
Well, if we have to take action, we should meet.
So,
you can make a recommendation, you could say proceed. The fact of the matter is, that is what's going to be identified as the profile of the weekend school district and what we look for.
so then, can you share with us what you have been doing with number 3, with the other districts and in the past?
So a lot of times, the districts will just say, because it's something we don't see all the time, we don't necessarily need the full team, but maybe having an associate even just readily available for any questions if needed, or have them just be on the phone or be there in person to go over materials briefly with us, just since it's not something you see every day. Some boards feel very confident with data. Some boards are like, you know what, we don't do this search business every day. We're lucky enough we don't have to. This is what we hired you for. So it's whatever your preference is.
The latter one. That's why we hired you. We don't do this for a living, and that's my opinion. Mr. Collins?
Speak in the mic. Can you speak in the mic, please?
My bad. I'm sorry. Usually people want me to mute my mic, but no, in all seriousness, this is one that probably doesn't need anybody here. I mean, in other words, this works real well on a screen. In terms of you're seeing the data, we're discussing it. You can decide that later. You don't have to decide it now. But from even the time we presented, now that we've been through the 2 years and what we do, there are times when we will say to you, because it's your travel budget, there are times that, and this is one that in all honesty, we will all be engaged together. You will all come up, but you'll have this information, you'll read the chart, we'll talk about why, but it's not, it's not a spreadsheet that's going to fill the screen per se, for 3 slides or anything like that. So this is just one that we would recommend. It's one of those ones we do together in Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Can you compare this 31 qualities document to, normally we do something like the job description and a rubric. Is this comparable to that? Taking the place of it? Is it included?
It is something that we do in place of, but it also will be reflective, or you'll have with it what the different focus groups said, and what are those general themes, what are the themes that come out of the board interviews. So though this is a data spreadsheet, it also will be influenced, and what that does, instead of just a rubric that you work on, it becomes a reflection of what your community said as well as what you said.
So when you're first putting it together, would you take our job description, extract some of those major characteristics?
I'm pretty sure these 31 qualities will cover almost everything that's in your job description. This is research-based, and we just revised it. We revise it every year or every 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
It used to be 33. Now we're down to 31. I'm sorry it didn't get to 29, but we're trying to get better.
All right, thank you.
So then, can we just take a consensus as far as the doing it by Zoom, this portion? Because as you stated, they'll still be with us, giving us the information. So if there's any question, but it'll be on Zoom versus them actually being here.
Can I suggest that we just go through all of this and put the list together and just take one consensus rather than on and on?
Well, but they're all different one, like the one that we would have, like number 3, we would have to bring that for, number 4, we'd have to bring that for a formal motion, because that's reimbursement. So that's something that we'd have to do, and we can't do that here. This is something we can do here because we don't need a formal motion for number 3, is that correct?
So one of the things that you can do, Chair Jordan, is to go through this list, fill in what you need to fill in, and then take a formal vote on everything that's on this list.
That's what I was saying.
All right, so Mr. Collins, we'll go ahead, or Molly, we can go ahead and continue. So we don't have the answer for you for number 3 yet, we will. Okay, so whatever you want to go next.
Okay, perfect. So then the next question, I think I already know the answer to, because it's Florida. But when we get to the second round of interviews, we want to have stakeholder input where they get a chance to meet and greet those candidates once they're boots on the ground.
I'm so sorry, I
missed that.
I missed that too. Could you please repeat that?
Sure. So since we kind of talked about the first round of interviews being done virtually, when we get down to the second round of interviews and the candidates have boots on the ground in Florida, will you want to give your stakeholders, your staff, your admin team the opportunity to meet the top 2 or 3 candidates and provide feedback to the board? They won't have a chance to rank or score the candidates, but they will have a chance to provide feedback for you all to review before making your final decision.
On that, please. I personally think that that's a great idea. I would like to hear from others. Ms. Gittens?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I'm just wondering where in here then is the, what would you call it, like the search committee? Is that a part of that? I know on one of the other superintendent searches, I was on the search committee, so we actually looked at the first round applications, and then we also were a part of the face-to-face interviews of the finalists. And that was community and staff. It was a mixed group, but it was called the Superintendent Search Committee, and I think some other board members have said they've been involved in those as well.
Well, I will share with you that our recommendation is that when it comes to selecting and shrinking, what I call shrinking the pool, when you go from the, say, 12 candidates we bring to you for consideration based on your profile and all the input, and you pick which ones you want to interview, that's the board decision.
No,
I don't
all
care
of
who
it
sits
is.
and listens, but that's a board decision.
Right,
Then
but
when
I
you-
mean, all of it is, what happened, the committee did not make any final decisions.
Okay, so-
They were just giving their input on.
Okay, so bear with me, Member Giddens, and see if this helps, and I mean, if it's satisfactory. So when we talked about engaging the community in the finalists, so you have 3 finalists, let's say, and we do recommend, if at all possible, 3. 3 finalists. So during that day, and they're probably each here a day, or you stagger them, so there's more than one here a day, but they're here a full day. This is a long day. That there are certain groups that they meet with. We will work with you on developing the questions from those groups that they ask the candidates. When that candidate is done, those that are in that group fill out an impression form. Keep in mind, we don't ask anybody to vote, because it's a false expectation. By law, and it's one of the few education laws that exist in all 50 states. The only person that has a vote is the school board.
Right.
But the impression sheets are invaluable to you all. So, and they will actually, and we will graph their responses by group, et cetera, and we will take comments. When it comes to the larger community meetings for each one of them, we actually suggest you stream that, put it out there, and anybody that's watched it has a chance to fill out an impression sheet as well. So those that either are not captured in one of those groups or those that couldn't make it still have an opportunity, because we're going to ask you to put it up and let people look at it for like 24 hours and fill out the impression sheet. So what we're trying to do is give you this kind of complete picture of those certain constituent groups that are questioning and responding, and those, and in a larger community environment, what those are, and then what their impressions are. So you will have those by charts, and then you'll again have this open comment section that we will provide you when it's over. And that's the one I said will become invaluable to who you select, not to mention to you all and staff. Again, that's another one of those, like, it's a community poll within the process. So I hope that begins to get at what you're talking about. I know it's not the same structure, remember? But I
No,
hope
that's fine. I totally understand, and I also completely understand that it is a board decision.
Right.
And I was just trying to figure out what is your structure for getting.
And I hope that's
So
clear.
that's fine.
I hope
Thank
that's
you.
clear, sure.
Any other, Ms. Giovanelli?
So I want to make sure that I'm understanding you. It doesn't sound like you're recommending a search committee. You're recommending groups and not have a separate search committee. So I just want to be real, okay, I want to be real clear on that, because I don't think it was quite crisp. So, and that's why earlier, and so you just mentioned recording it so others, or streaming it so others can see and watch, but that was kind of what that was a question that I asked earlier, would it be, recorded or some way where others could see it that weren't able to attend? So you're recommending that then?
For the community meetings, and
Yeah,
particularly
stakeholder meetings.
for,
Right.
you could even do the community meetings for the first round, but, when we're doing the profile, but particularly for the finalists, yes.
Okay, thank you. Just want clarity.
Was that any other?
Yep, thank
Okay.
you.
Sorry, are there any, Ms. Vaughn, please?
I just thought of something. Would the, in the final evaluation, has it been your experience that the existing highest tier administrators and some administrators representing principals, but I'm thinking mainly of the people on the administrative level that will need to work directly with our superintendent candidate, that they get any kind of special input, or how does that work? Because I know I haven't been on this level, but as a department chair, when I was in Texas, when we interviewed for a new principal, that was one whole meeting that all the department chairs came in and we interviewed the candidates, and then we had, I don't know how much input in it, but we definitely, because we were the people that were going to be working directly with the principal. So I'm wondering the same.
So that would be one of the groups that you would have for the finalists. They would have their own questions, just like another group might have their own questions, and they will identify themselves and fill out one of these impression sheets. So you may know what your principals think, you may know what your administrators think, or however you want to divvy the groups up.
Okay.
So we will facilitate all that. Okay, so you do accomplish it, but they become one of the entities during that finalist day.
Okay, so one of the entities, but they would be separated out. So we would know, and then it would be up to us as individuals, as we read the impressions, if we felt like, maybe put a little more weight in our minds on the people that are going to work directly. Oh, okay, I just wanted to figure out how that all works.
And that's totally your choice.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions, comments? Okay. Mr. Collins or Molly?
The next couple questions are much easier. So the next question is, who will be our in-house contact person and who will be our board contact person? So somebody that's on the board, and then also somebody that can deal with the phone calls every once in a while, asking, for general questions that maybe are not necessarily board related.
Ooh, I don't.
Typically, I'll tell you it is the board president. And then I know she's probably wanting to kick me through the Zoom, but typically be somebody like Lizette or LaTanya that would be our district person.
Okay, so we'll have to give you, I definitely, right now, I'm your contact, so I guess I can continue to be that, but as far as if that's okay with the rest of the board. And the in-house contact person, we'll definitely get back with you on who that is.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, and then the next discussion is the promotional flyer. And I know that I sent you all a couple samples. They're from neighboring districts from Hillsborough and Marion, and I believe Palm Beach. So those are the typical flyers that we would put together. We can either do those in-house, like I mentioned, or if you have somebody that's within the district that's what they do, that would be awesome. It is not my primary job, but I do the best that I can. But I also don't want to add more pressure onto your staff. So you guys take a peek at those and then let me know if it's something where you would like us to do it with the firm. I'll just need a point person who has those pictures and those blurbs. If you want to direct it to somebody who's in-house that can do it, I'll be more than happy to send them samples and also give them my contact information for any questions or concerns.
I think Ms. Gittens has a question.
Well, just
Please.
Since we have the web page and a lot of this information is on there, the question I think is to Lauren with communication. Could we facilitate this piece?
Thank you for being here, Ms. Stillwell.
Hello. Yes, we would be happy to take this piece and collaborate with Ray and Associates to put the whole thing together. But we could do our branding, and we have some templates and stuff that we could use. And so, yes, we could absolutely take that on.
And it can also be mirrored on the web page as well.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
And
Okay.
social media and anywhere else we need to put it.
So, Molly, did you hear that? So Ms. Stillwell has that, okay.
If I could just add a footnote just for our team, so for Karen and Steve and Molly, communications will also be, with Lizette, will also be the other part of the contact. As we're sitting side by side and having a chance to chat, you just haven't had the privilege of meeting, and so I will connect all of us, because the communication side will be another real asset, as you know, an asset to what we do.
Right, and I just want to make sure too that communications department is totally different than Lizette or Latanya.
Right.
So, yeah,
Yeah, and they're also in charge of community engagement, which is kind of right,
Correct.
kind of right where we got to be.
yes. Thank you. Okay, it's back to you again, Molly.
Okay, so then the next item would be the online application. And I believe you all have the link. I know that we can't make any decisions here, so my recommendation as your consultant would be to get your legal team to get their eyes on it, make sure everything looks good and okay. The only sometimes suggestions that people want to add on to those is when it comes to foreign language piece. They may want to ask if there's any additional languages spoken. If so, what are they? That's been very popular, not popular, but we've been seeing that more and more in the last like 2 years. And then the boxes underneath with all the legal jargon, that's where we really want your legal team to take a peek at it, make sure that it meets state laws and that it's not crossing any lines, or if we need to wordsmith something, we certainly can. But because we can't make any votes today, I would really, as your consultant, recommend that your legal team get some eyes on it. And I'd be more than happy to work with them too.
So we will definitely review that and get in touch with Molly.
Thank you. Okay.
And
I'm sorry, Ms. Gittens, go ahead, please.
sorry.
No.
On 7 and 8, approval of online application and advertisements, I really think that should be the board, even if it's done in one of our departments. The board should have the final approval of everything.
Right, so once they, the online application and the advertisement, of course, will come back to us, and we will look at that and go ahead and approve that, and at that time, we will be able to send that out. I agree with you. So it'll be based on approval of the board. Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Ms. Patrica?
So I know during the interim superintendent search, there was some discussion by the board, and there was some appetite by the board to attract a non-traditional candidate, meaning not just an educational leader, perhaps a business leader with significant C-suite experience. And this application doesn't seem to attract that kind of candidate. Because if we're looking for a CEO, he or she does not necessarily have a school district, certified, classified staff, that kind of thing. So I wonder whether we could word that more plainly to attract different types of candidates. And I think, if I recall correctly, one of the things that was in your presentation to the board that I found attractive was your ability to attract non-traditional candidates.
Mr.
Absolutely, I
Collins
can
or Molly?
definitely do that. I can modify it so that it says number of employees rather than just enrollment, so it's enrollment. We can definitely wordsmith that and make that more user-friendly to those that aren't coming from the school background.
For Patrica, if we could, why don't we take those kind of suggestions from you all along with what legal has, and we'll package them all together and you'll look at a piece. The other thing we will do is regardless of what it says, is that once we are aware of any non-traditional or what we call hybrid candidates, that means they've got both sets of experiences, we will then work with them in case there's any questions on any application. I mean, we'll have a conversation with them. We spend a lot of time with people that are applying, so we would welcome that, as well as know those that could fit that category.
Is there any other questions? Anyone else? Ms. Gittens?
I hope I'm not jumping ahead, Molly, but in number 10, when it talks about the contact of finalists that would need to obtain licensing in Florida, if we're talking about the potential of a hybrid candidate, wouldn't that be kind of a given, per se, if we had someone that is more on the business side of things and not so much the educational? I don't know. I kind of think we need to look for maybe the hybrid more so than going one side or the other side of the fence, and I'm asking my colleagues that question.
Ms. Pacheco?
Certification's not required in Florida, is it?
What did you ask?
Certification's not required in Florida. It's my understanding that certification is similar to certified board member status for us. It's training that they go through FADS, and they can get it or not get it, but it's not like the education certification that Board Attorney Dupree Bruno is going through. That's very rigorous, and it's a certain number of hours, and it's my understanding that superintendent certification is not quite the same.
Well, no, I was basing that on question 10, obtaining licensing. So you're saying that that really is a question because it's not necessary.
Yeah, remember,
I'd like to call around to my colleagues and find out how many of them require it, but I don't, never heard of it as being a thing. I'm sorry if I interrupted you.
Yeah, I'm going to have Ms. Dupree Bruno please answer that, and then I'm going to, Molly, I'm going to have Ms. Dupree Bruno first say something, then I'm going to come back to you, and then I'm going to go to Ms. Fisher.
so remember, Article 5 of the Constitution establishes the superintendent. It's an elected position pursuant to the Constitution. There is no requirement. Anyone can sit in that position. But we obviously appoint, so we can have our criteria based on our job description.
Thank you. And Molly, we're going to add something to that?
Yes, so we have these questions. They're pretty standard for every state because obviously I can't live in every single state and know every single state guidelines. I'm very good with Iowa, Florida, not so much. So why we have those questions about the specific state requirements to number 9 and then number 10, and then the application itself is we really want your in-house legal team to take a look because they're going to know Florida law better than anybody on this call. And so those are why they're on there. They're just standard. I kind of knew what Florida had and what was needed, what wasn't, but everybody interprets it differently. I've had different lawyers in the same states interpret things very differently. So I just wanted to get your legal team to take a look at those items and then make sure that we're all doing our due diligence moving forward where everybody feels comfortable.
Yeah, I was just going to say that in the Florida Statute 1001.47, that's all described because in many counties, the superintendent is elected. So there is not a education requirement for that CEO. So I think that we have to have an application that allows for all kinds of applicants. And then there is, I heard at the delegation meeting last week that there is a proposal for elected superintendents in this, for those who, in this county. Yes, so
For referendum.
I think that we just have to have an application process that allows, that's generic and general enough for anyone who's qualified to be a CEO to apply.
Perfect, thank you. Ms. Dupree Bruno?
So for number 9, should we look at the job description and the qualifications that you had, the minimum qualifications? I think it was a master's degree and those types of things for number 9.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Vaughn, I apologize.
Oh, no, this is just kind of a research question. And maybe since Ms. Patrica is involved with the state association, where's the best place to really do some reading? I'd like to do some reading on general successes with, more the CEO type as a superintendent versus all education versus, I would think maybe even a hybrid would be the best of two worlds, but is there research on that that's easy to, I don't want to read a 300-page dissertation, but...
No, I would, Member Vaughn, I would not suggest a manual, I promise. Actually, the 2 first stops, I would suggest, and either by email or, as well as, because you look on their website, it might take you a while to find it, but both your national organization, because this is where I found it. When I was one of you, as you recall, I spent 2 terms as one of you. is NSBA, and they'll have some track record on that.
Okay.
And AASA would be the other one, which is the American Association of School Administrators, which is your Superintendent's Association. They both have data on that. But that's where, that's your first quick
Okay,
summary
yeah,
shot.
that's what I wanted to know, just a starting point.
Yeah.
Because I think maybe it would be, some of you probably know this stuff, but it might behoove some of us just to do a little background reading over these next couple months to, you know, I can see where there's pluses and minuses on both sides.
Yeah,
I'm just
and
curious how it all
aside from those that are elected, which is a whole different conversation.
Yeah, well.
But I think I'll call it an educated guess on a good day, let's put it that way. But somewhere around 10 to 12% of those superintendents in America are typically identified as hybrid and non-traditional.
Well,
not 25%, just to give you an idea.
Okay, say that again, 10 to 12?
10 to 12, say 10 to 15. That's what I recall. So
Okay.
at best, it's an educated guess.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you it's hard data, but
Yeah, just as a ballpark.
But that's where, if I was really looking, those would be my first places right away. And I think you can get summaries of some of that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other questions? Molly, take it away.
Okay. We're going to backtrack just a little bit, guys. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Let me, I think we're going to move.
I'm very sorry. As I mentioned, we're at 2 days left of summer before preschool starts, so I'm trying the working at home mom shtick right now. Let me just remove him really quick.
Going to the pen.
In fairness to Miles, so what we're going to turn our attention to is where I think she's going next, is the advertising, the suggested advertising. So that's a form that you have just to get us started on that. We have taken this and we break it down into those items that are available that we recommend and those that are also other things that are available. This, President Jordan, this will require a vote because it's an expenditure. I know it's in our contract where we estimated it, but you pay for this. So whenever you pull those decisions together, like it's your next meeting, this would be one we'd ask you to consider. We want to talk about it now, but we would suggest that you actually, I mean, it's an expenditure. So, and Molly, I'm not trying to steal your thunder because I know you love this. So if you want to go next, I'll be quiet again. How's that?
Fair enough. This is my favorite part. All right, so we're just going to go through these items. I know we can't vote on anything, but I will give you my recommendations. So the two biggest ones for any school search is going to be AASA and then Education Week. AASA is one of the best. You could do a 60-day run for your 60-day recruitment, but what I would really recommend doing is doing that job flash package. It's for $599. It is only for 30 days. So what I would recommend doing for your 60-day recruitment is staggering your advertising. So I would be putting up new ads, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, keeping it continuous. But the job flash package is really great because it does an online posting, but then it also is emailed directly to over 5,000 sitting superintendents. And word of mouth is everything in this business. Karen and Steve can definitely speak to that. But when it goes out in word of mouth and your peers are talking, and the superintendent world, I always joke around that it's the biggest small town ever because I swear everybody knows everybody. And word of mouth really generates a good job posting. So I would really recommend that $599. And then as far as Education Week, that 30-day posting is included in our base fee. So I would not recommend doing anything additional. The print ad, I hate to say it, is a dying art. Not really worth the money at this point. We have done the inline ads. We have done the banner ads. I don't see the return on it, honestly. So I don't see the need to do it. So what I would suggest doing is maybe do AASA for 30 days, then do Education Week for the remaining 30. I would recommend doing NAPCI and ALIS. NAPCI is $250 for 30 days. ALIS is $200 for 6 weeks. Then the NASS website is free. Our website is free. The Ladders is free. And then I would ask that somebody within the district, whoever our contact is, would send the advertisement to the Florida School Board Association and the Florida Association of School Administrators and the Florida Association of School Business Officials. As somebody in Iowa, they may try to charge me, but with being an in-state district, they won't charge you. There's some additional advertising down here. The only one that I would really recommend you guys taking a look at and contemplating whether you want to spend the money would be for Career Builder. It's an affiliate of USA Today, and it does run for 30 days. Now, if you were a small district here in Iowa, I wouldn't even recommend it. You guys are a very large system in Florida. I would strongly recommend that you take a peek at that and add that $375 to your budget for advertising, in addition to these items up here that I mentioned.
Out here to see if Ms. Vaughn would take this on. She was doing the advertising with our HR last time for the interim, and you brought all that to us, and I was wondering if everybody would be okay with her doing this again for us, if that's...
That works for me, if it works for everybody else.
I was going to ask Molly if, I mean, this is like the complete list. So I'm wondering if we can get a list with the recommendations and the total cost, because this is everything.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we can get that, because this is a lot to look at, and then mark which one. So
I think
to me, that would be how we would get to our budget. Am I correct?
Yes, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's what Molly just did. It gave us the $599, the $395, the $250, the $200, $375, and then the only one that I would have to re-ask was the AASA, if that was the $409 or the $649. I don't know if anybody else got which one she had mentioned on that one.
That's
She said the 409.
The job package.
The package.
You wouldn't need to do the additional 409 or 649.
all of the recommendations with the total at the bottom.
Madam Chair, I believe it comes out to $1819 for the total for all of those different packages that she said, the ones that were recommended at least.
Okay, Molly, would you please, I know you have this and you can pull those out very easily, I'm assuming, and just all the free ones, of course, are free. We could throw those down on the bottom, and then all the ones that have monetary amounts with them, with the Job Flash, the Education Week, NABSE, Associates and Latino, and then the other Career Builder. If you could put all of those again on another sheet with, you know, the ones with the monetary amount, and then, of course, the free ones, and or send that to us, and then Ms. Vaughn will be able to have that, and everybody else will have that.
I was just going to say, can we not just run down the list that she just gave? And
We just did, and I know
That's
Ms.
all right.
Gittin still wanted it.
No, that's okay. If no one else wants it, that's fine.
Oh,
I just would have to
And
have her go
I
back.
do want to just clarify real quick, that the total is 1,424 that we're recommending, because that Education Week, that $395, it is included in our base fee, but you all are not charged for that. We believe in that so much as advertising that we included that in our base fee.
Base fee. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and if I may, President Jordan, the only thing that may be, because I don't know specifically, your Florida School Boards Association, Association of School Administrators, and Association of School Business Officials, You're members of those, so I don't know if that becomes complimentary or it's just a reduced rate, because if we do it, I can tell you we're going to pay premium. That's why we ask you to do it. I just can't tell you right now if it's free or it's just a reduced rate for members, either way.
No, thank you for that, and that's something that Ms. Vaughn can work with.
Yeah, sure.
To get that for us, and she has done this in the past for us, the board, and brought everything to us. So if that's acceptable by the board members that Ms. Vaughn does that, I would really appreciate just a consensus on that one would be great.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea, so.
And the last thing I would add to that is, given in our proposal to you, our estimate, which we always estimate very high, it is far greater than what you're talking about in terms of costs. So when you looked at an overall, even though it doesn't, our fee is our fee, period, and there were these two add-ons, one's travel for us and one's advertising. This should actually reduce what could have been your overall amount. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for stating that. Okay, Molly. Thank you. What's next, hon?
Muted, I think.
She's getting the next screen up.
No, she's talking and we don't
I'm
hear.
sorry. So we went through the other material. So we already went through number 9. We talked about number 10. As far as for the invoicing, who should we be sending that invoice to?
She's the bookkeeper in our office.
Wonderful.
Ms. Giovanelli?
Okay. And the last
Wait,
but not least is we're going
wait.
to go over the.
Hey,
what we're
Molly,
recommending
we
for the
have
salary
one-
here.
we
And
have
so I'm
one
gonna pull it up
question.
now.
Molly,
Molly,
we have one question from Ms. Giovanelli.
Sure.
It's not a question, actually. Then I would recommend, if she's going to be handling the invoices, then why shouldn't she just be the contact? Because otherwise, then you're talking to somebody else about, and I mean, it just would make sense that she would.
Well, because it depends on who's at these meetings. So both of them, actually, Lizette and Latanya both equally receive the phone call, so they have to both be equally
Okay, well, then
engaged with
that's
this.
fine. If it's both of them, that's fine.
Yeah, we just have to make sure that they both are in sync with each other. So if one's not here, the other one's here. Like today, Latanya should have been out here, but Lizette is out here for this. So they kind of like switch off, so they work together.
Be like co-contact.
Yeah, they're co-contacts, yes. And they send both to, they send all the information to both of them right now anyway.
Right.
Right, but I knew that was one of the questions. That's all I was trying
Yes,
to.
thank you, Ms.
Get an answer
Giovanelli,
there.
for bringing that up. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, Molly, I'm sorry.
You're fine. Last but not least, we're just going to bring up the estimated kind of salary comp to give you an idea of what you're up against with your competition on a national level. And then we'll deliberate or kind of have a discussion about thoughts from that document. So let me pull it up right now. So here you will see we've got the column started from 2017 all the way to what next school year would be, or this school year would be, excuse me. And so you'll see the enrollment, and then you'll see the average, and then you'll see the estimated salary. You will notice that Round Rock, Texas has 3 asterisks by it. We did that search, so we know what that salary was advertised at, so we didn't need to go back through the estimated salaries. We know what it was advertised for this coming school year, and that was $350,000. And so right now, with it, and we tried to do a national so that you could see both Florida about what you were up against, also Texas, Virginia, California, Oklahoma, Kansas City, Missouri, and Alabama. So we wanted to bring those up just so you could see. But right now we've got you at $284,553.
Okay, is there discussion? Ms. Patrica?
This is the only part of the presentation that I'm really uncomfortable with. Like, I just did a quick search, 35,000 students in the Oklahoma City Public Schools. So I understand that, you know, they pay their superintendent $350,000, but their district is not remotely close to ours. Can you provide us with an analysis to include districts that are located close to us geographically, perhaps the top, 10, 12 districts in Florida, and then look at districts across the country that are similar to us in size, so that, we, like a real market rate analysis. It's my understanding that the 209 we pay the superintendent right now is at the 19th percentile as compared to superintendents across the state of Florida. I'd like to have that kind of analysis if we could.
Yeah, and I apologize for the confusion on this. We tried to do a national so that you can see that there is some Florida in there, so you can kind of see what you're up against in state. But then we also wanted to show you, just because the candidates that you're getting will not just be from Florida, they're going to be looking at other jobs in other states, and just wanted you to kind of see what you're up against, and then you can make the best educated decision. So, I'm so sorry. We know that this is high because of Florida, but we just wanted you to see what's up against. We're not recommending that you take that 284. We're just that he is at 284, but it's high, but gives you an idea of what you're up against. Sorry, just the big sister got home. He's pretty excited to see her.
Well, they know when mom's on the phone, always.
That's right.
They get that. And so we do have a couple questions. Ms. Gittens has a question.
Yes, we went through, in 2018 and 19, the market analysis. I believe Dr. Pruitt and HR did that, and all of the, that included superintendent's salary, et cetera. So we have recently done a market study, and I believe that study was across the nation, not just Florida. So I'm under the impression that the salaries that we have are pretty much up to par and up to date with national averages, because at least that's what we were told, that these, the market rates. So I don't see where we would have to do that again. We should be able to revive that from HR or from someone, maybe even Dr. Desimore or someone that would have that list. But we've done that exercise already.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. And I'm sorry, Ms. Patrick, I know you had another question.
Well, yeah, I mean, the market rate analysis is one thing, but where we fall in terms of, like right now we're at the 19th percentile. So we need to have a discussion as a board to figure out, do we want to compare ourselves to other districts in Florida? Are we going to be looking at Broward and Palm Beach, who are also hiring right now? How do we become the most competitive? And I was hoping that we could get some recommendations from Ray and Associates in that regard, because it's the first time I've ever hired a superintendent, so I'm kind of relying on your expertise there.
So if I may, and to both of you, board members.
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
I'm sorry, is that better?
Yep. Much better.
So you're looking, I will tell you, there are certain salaries in Florida that are hard to find. You are, as a state, they're short of public records requests, this is probably the most challenging state to find salaries, but we have a number of them. So we will look. Board member Gittens, if you also could ask, if we could see that study from 18 or 19, I'd welcome it as well. So we will do Florida, we will do nationally, we'll get closer to your size in both cases. It's just the list will get shorter, just because you're larger. So we're happy to provide that, and certainly before your next meeting for consideration. And then I'd love to see what you have from 18 or 19, whatever it was, just honestly out of curiosity or updating. The other thing that I will recommend is whatever these numbers are that you're going to see now, that you put at least 3% on them, because whoever is going to start in this position is really going to be, those rates are going to be effective primarily by next July 1. Of which there'll be an average of a 3 to 4% raise. So whatever we show you, you got to tack on 3% to that, I would say, just to have an understanding of what the marketplace will look like in July 1 of 2022.
Okay. Did you have another question, Ms. Patrica?
Not right now. Thank you.
Ms. Giovanelli and then Ms. Morgan.
Okay, so it looks like this was prepared for Marion County. So I don't see Marion County on here. I would like to see maybe didn't you just recently hire for Marion County?
Same time as Hillsborough. We'll get you the full list. We'll get you the list.
Okay, because that would help a little bit more with Florida, I think, that Ms.
Yep.
Patrica's requesting, so.
And, is that it?
Yeah.
Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, just for clarification, I think what Ms. Gittens is referencing was done in, I think, 2017, when we were talking about benchmarking, starting to benchmark administrator salaries, moving up everybody's salary, trying to get to the 50th percentile. We were way, way, way low. It was a significant increase at that time. It didn't get us close to what our intent was at the time, which was to be at least 50% of the salaries, average salary in Florida. So the number we're paying still is low, given the fact that we had to convince the community to pay a significant bump up at that time.
Yeah, and I don't recall when that was. I do recall that we did have the market analysis for across the board on most of those job descriptions. So, Ms. Gittens, if you want to.
No, it was, I remember it was 2018 because I sat with the superintendent and Dr. Pruitt going over it. And I do recall conversations about that Dr. Atkins' salary was not up to certain standards or whatever, but we did have that information, is all I'm saying, because he was able to say, here's what the average or whatever is, and I'm below that, and I remember those discussions, so I know it was 2018, and it was just prior to the executive salary increases at the end of 2018.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what the exact date. I know it was since we were here, though. And so we can ask for that and share that with Mr. Collins.
Can I ask a question?
And then I'm going to go to Ms. Fisher, and then I'll come back to you. Ms. Fisher?
So the Marion County salary for the newly hired superintendent is $210,000. And then I pulled up this market rates for salaries for school superintendents, and it says in Florida, the percentiles 25, 50, 75, and 90. If we're at the 90th percentile, it says 219,903. The 50th percentile is 157,669. There is not a date on this, so I don't know how current it is, but it was at the top of the list. And then it said the 2021 average school superintendent salary in the United States is $165,967. And I think the thing that we have to consider is the size of our district as opposed to, some of the districts like in New York where they're lower. However, if they have 5,000 kids in the district, that might be a lot. So I think we have to take a look at that. And I think Ms. Patrica said to look at like size or the 10 largest districts in the state of Florida and large district elsewhere to get a better analysis. Thank you.
Ms. Patrica?
So don't we use ERI data for internal positions, for staff positions? And could we get staff to run that report for us, please?
We do use it, and I'm sure staff can run the report. We'll have to talk to, I think it's generated through HR. So.
And the other thing is, when we're looking at districts across the country, Ms. Fisher, through the chair, I would be interested in seeing, we're 33rd largest, so I would be interested in seeing those in the, 25 to 45, the 25th largest through the 35th largest, or something along those lines, to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples. And I don't know what source you're looking at right now, but I believe Mr. Carvalho down in Dade makes in excess of $375 with bonuses for performance, certain performance targets. I could be wrong, but I think it's around there. So those averages make me a little.
Right. And
Raise some flags for me. I'm not suggesting 375. I'm not suggesting that. Please be clear. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just.
And Ms. Fisher, did you want to share that? And then I'm going to go to Ms. Vaughn. Did you want to share your where you are seeing that at?
Oh, okay.
Just for, if anybody else wants to look at that.
Sure, let's see. And I just put I Googled market rates for salaries for school superintendents, and that's what that came up. School
Okay.
superintendent salary in Florida and the percentiles.
Okay, perfect, thank you, Ms. Fisher. And then Ms. Vaughn?
Well, I caution just looking at size, because if you go to compare salaries, for instance, in the Northeast, you're going to find very small school districts that pay a lot of money. And sometimes, I know in New Jersey, there were school districts that were like one school and had its own superintendent. Did you say you're from Princeton?
No,
Who was, somebody was.
Dr. Cochran, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I'm gonna guess that Princeton, considering the demographics and the, well, it's probably pretty liberal for the most part, and the cost of living in some of these, I'm looking at Round Rock. I think Round Rock isn't very far from Austin, which in Texas, which some of these places have gone crazy. We think it's expensive to live in Fort Myers. It's just balanced against the other salaries that people get and the value that people place on education in like New Jersey or Massachusetts. So size alone isn't really going to help us unless we're looking at, I think, Florida and some similar places. Anyway.
Ms. Morgan,
Yeah,
please.
so I want to throw in, I know what Lee Health does. Lee Health looks at the salaries across the country, but they factor in the local economic indicator.
Yeah.
And essentially, that's what we need to do. I mean, I think we need to be looking at a competitive salary given our economic profile locally.
So, President Jordan, we will again go back and take similar districts in Florida, similar districts, both size and scope, elsewhere, and present it to you for your, continued discussion, and we'll try to do that readily.
Thank you.
So, because this is you're going to have a document where everybody's got the same data, and then whatever the district comes up with in terms of you're asking for, if you could share that as well. And we'll be as helpful as possible in the whole review.
Yeah, and one other question about this. This is base salary. I'm assuming that we're going to have to, obviously there's some basic things like health insurance.
None of that's in here. This is strictly salary. This has nothing to do with that.
But are we going to need, I guess there's some negotiated things, like I think, didn't Dr. Atkins' contract have something in it about retirement, special retirement plan or bonuses?
You can do that.
So isn't that something that we're going to need to decide on also? A base salary and then the kinds of.
Yeah, and some of that occurs in, remember, Vaughn, some of that occurs in the negotiations, some of it occurs, and what we will recommend is that you'll pick a number or a small range. We do not, as you heard us in our presentation, a small range.
Okay.
So in the range of, so it gives you liberty both, back and front, with a very competitive fringe benefit package.
Okay.
You don't need to be more descriptive, but you need to be at least that descriptive. And then I think, it's, honestly, it'll move back and forth between the board, your legal staff, and their legal staff.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Okay, Molly, what's next?
And it's it for our meeting.
So what we're looking at, what we're looking at is consensus on number 3, as far as the, doing that as a Zoom meeting. versus an in-person meeting. So do I have consensus on that? For the 31, yes? Can I see a thumbs up, please?
Zoom.
I thought we were going to put them all together, but that's fine.
The only one that, thank you. So we have consensus on that. The only one that we need to bring to the board, and that would be number 4, and that is the, for a vote, and that would be determining the, because it's dealing with the money, the reimbursement fees.
So is number 1.
Number 1 and, well, number 1 and number 4 are basically the same. It's the same. It's just, am I correct in what I'm saying that? Molly?
No.
Number 1 and number 4. Number 1, number 4 is Zooming for the first round of people. And then the second round, we need to reimburse the candidates, which is discussion for procedure. That's the same thing.
No, number 4 is about constituent input in either round 1 or 2, or both. Number 1 is about reimbursing the candidates' travel.
Yeah.
So
I thought we talked about the first round of interviews. It's done by you, and the final round will have significant community engagement as we help
Right.
you structure it.
Right, so number 4 was, the first round was Zoom online,
Right.
and then the second round was bringing them in person, bringing them here, and then reimbursing them for that, correct?
Correct.
Or did I misunderstand that?
Yeah.
Ms. Dupree Bruno?
So the number 1 is with regards to whether or not you want the candidates to fly in for the first round or the second round. And I think the board stated that they wanted the first round versus via Zoom and the second round in person. And number 4 is with regards to the community involvement. Do you want community involvement for both rounds of interviews? And also, Madam Chair, it would appear that there's a lot of things here that would require a formal action vote. For example, are you going to go with the 30-day or the 60-day? The recommendation is the 60-day, so.
I'm, if I may,
Ms. Gittens?
number 1, I think we need to have a vote on number 2 about the timeline, 30 or 60. I don't know about number 3 is the qualities, and I think that's just a given. Number 4, whether that, to me, that's a vote because it's either, when the constituents get to give input. And then the rest, I think, are the flyer, we already said, if we're not, the rest are like people, who's going to do this and which department's going to do that. But the monetary ones, and then, of course, 12, which is about the salary. So
But at this time, we are not at 12 because we don't have that information yet, so that'll be another revisit on that one.
And number 7, President Jordan, because it's advertising, you're going to have to formally approve that.
Right, so we'll approve that after, right, after that's done, that'll come back before us, and then we have to approve those, the advertising and the applications. So that will come before the board again for approving. So the only thing that we have to, for tomorrow is just bringing before the, at our next action meeting is for the
1, 2, and 4.
reimbursement for the,
Number 1, number 2,
candidates.
and number 4, if you look at them that way.
well, number 2, we don't need, well, okay, 2, we would need a
do.
timeline. Okay.
So
And-
1, 2, 4, and then he just said 7 for the online application.
But we don't need that yet because we don't have that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant 8, not 7. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we don't have this. This will have to come before us again. After completion, it's going to come back before the board for approval. So right now, so we'll just do 1, 2, and 4 will come before us at the next meeting.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
When is our next meeting?
Or,
Monday and Tuesday next month.
yeah, next week.
Oh, sorry, I'm in January. So would, through the chair, would it be too much to ask Ms. Vaughn? Do you think you would be able to have those numbers ready for us to vote on? So we could handle number 8
Yeah,
next week as
as a
well?
matter of fact, I was just going to say, we don't, separate from approve the actual application, it will be easy to have those numbers.
Okay, so we are going to bring
That we
back,
have to approve the spending amount, yeah.
perfect, so thank you.
Yep.
So we will have to approve 1, 2, 4, and 8, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
One, 2, 4, and 8. And then I'm going to also ask something as far as the, where was that at? The contact for, the district contact, I'm going to ask if we could, I know LaTanya and Lizette are in our office, but I'm going to ask if Mrs. Stillwell would be that person, because she can pull, she's our strategic communication, and she can pull in the communication, she can pull in budgeting, she can pull in all the people that we need, as well work with the ladies in our office. Without them, because she's got better access to everyone for that reason. I haven't asked her, but Ms. Giovanelli?
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Is this adding something else to her job, her plate that might be, without talking to the superintendent, I think we have to be careful in delegating work like that at this, without staying in our lane,
Oh, I get what you're saying.
And if I may, I think that each item, Ray and Associates has pretty much laid it out by, detail on each item. So as long as they have the person to contact.
But that's what I'm saying. If we have one person who can contact for advertising, who can contact, who's in charge of, who's in communication, per going through the superintendent. Thank you, Ms. Giovanelli, for reminding me of that. Going through the superintendent, I just think that she's already part of the communication, and she has been with us. He has her here today with us. So he wanted her here to assist us today. And she has been a part of it since from the very beginning. And I just think that has an easier, it's just easier for her to get to whoever we need to without going through. And then that keeps the ladies doing what they have to do as well. So, and Ms. Stillwell, would that be something that you would be willing to do? I didn't ask you that, but.
I would be happy to do that if it's the will of the board.
Like she's going to say no.
She would say no.
It would be a nice distraction from what I have been doing.
So is that acceptable per the superintendent's approval of that? For sure. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Thank you, Mr. Owen. I will make sure that we go through the superintendent. And yes, go ahead, because I'm going to ask Ms. Gittens how I can change her mind.
Okay. Well, I was just curious why she's not with us. That's,
Yeah.
that's.
Ms. Gittens. Thank you.
I thought that we basically were going to keep this process within the board.
Okay.
And I thought we were not going to include other departments and all that, and we had discussed that in the previous meetings, which is, I'm not adverse to her doing it. I just feel that we had extensive discussions about that, about us managing this process, because otherwise we're going to turn it over to HR originally, and we said, no, we want to make sure that the board is maintaining this process.
If I may, I just think that we did say that the last time, and unfortunately, we did say that, but we had to reach out to them because we do not have the qualifications to do this. We don't have the knowledge to do this, and we were having to ask HR and other people to help us with this because they're the ones, like Ms. Vaughn had to get with them to do our advertising. We had to go to this one to get our to the rooms. We had to go to this one to get this. So we are going to them and reaching out saying, okay, do we have the funds to get this? Where do we get those funds from? So in essence, we were having to use our staff. And if we don't trust the staff to help us and they're not the ones who are hiring the superintendents, they are not the ones who are interviewing the candidates. That's still all up to us.
And I'm not saying there's a mistrust. What I'm saying is our discussion previously was to keep it from having so many people having to do things. That's why we hired Ray and Associates to basically manage the process. And if they needed something from internal, they would let us know. I'm not comfortable adding another thing, and even though, like you said, she's not going to say no, but it's a lot.
And Mr. Collins, if you will, please, or Molly, or whoever would like to chime in, when you are doing these searches, obviously you have people within the organization who assist you in what you need, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've never seen one where it's finite, it's only one person. We're going to there's a part of this, in all honesty, I'm sorry, Lizette, and others, that it's going to wind up over there because it's going to have to do with communications with you guys, okay? And there's a part, typically, it's either in the communications, public relations side, a little bit of HR, that we're going to touch at some point. And if you get into the constituent meetings, I'm sure it's going to come back towards communications and engagement. So what we try to establish is, okay, the board president or someone their designee is who we talk to from a board standpoint. There's somebody in that role of a Lizette that we typically work with, and at some point we're going to touch this side, because we hope that part of the reason you selected us was because of our constituent engagement, and that typical, and in a district your size, my goodness, that's a whole other profession all by itself.
Correct.
So I think we're right on target. I don't mean to ask more work of anybody, but I was envisioning, once I found out that this lovely department exists, I knew for sure I was going to get to know that email. It's just because that's the way it's going to happen.
Okay. So that would be a recommendation for you to work within that department as a liaison, kind of?
That's not what he said, excuse me. What he was saying is that he would work to...
what he was saying, though, Ms. Gittens.
Okay.
Mr. Collins, is that what you're saying? That being you've met and had this conversation, that would be a good liaison for you to have?
Yeah, particularly for certain functions, not necessarily all of them. Okay, I don't know how you lump all of what this entails typically in just one person.
Correct.
Invariably, it's not going to work that way.
Thank you.
It's a very small group, and so we don't infringe on a lot of staff, and we're not engaging a lot of people. But I've not met that one person yet, let's put it that way.
All right, thank you. Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, I was going to ask if we need to kind of cement the contact constituents. We've got the date of the 7th of September, contact constituents and stakeholders, and we had mentioned that beside the foundation groups, that the suggestion was that each of us as a board member submit lists of other groups that we might want to see in the focus groups.
Yes, that's
So I'm wondering if we need to, since the due date is the 7th, we'll want to have our groups collated and decided on before the 7th, correct?
Well, or if we get the total list by the 7th, we're going to go through and suggest to you which ones get collapsed, and isn't this group related to this group, and how do you feel about this? And we're going to turn that around real fast, so you'll have it in time. The reason for the 7th is we're not talking until the 21st to start doing it.
Right, but what I'm asking is, when should we be turning in our list of groups that we want to, different special interests or?
Well, because of Labor Day, I would guess you would be submitting it to somebody to submit to us by that Friday before, more than likely. We would get it on the 7th, because Labor Day.
So, in other words, we do need to set.
Gotcha.
Do we not?
So if we're looking at, we're looking at like the 4th? If it's September the 7th,
Yeah.
are you looking at, well, by, go ahead.
Everybody know, you guys are lucky enough, you don't have to do this daily, we do. If you guys got us that list by the 7th, we would have it turned around either same day or first thing the next morning of a tentative schedule. We would just need everybody to be, yes, that's good to go for the 21st and 22nd, and then get it advertised out there.
Yeah, I'm not clear on how we reach consensus on which groups will be included in that process.
Well, okay, Molly, can you please explain, these are for if there's extra groups that we want to bring in. That's the list that they're looking for. The extra groups is what they're looking for. The other ones you're going to be reaching.
Put it out there right now.
Yeah.
We ran into this, we did it in Salt Lake City, where each board member submitted their list. There may be some that get combined. And it may be where one board member has the same names as another board member as far as groups, and that's okay. But there may be a few where we have to combine them for schedule-wise. But we just ask that you trust us that we do this daily and that we are successful at making these schedules and putting them together and getting everybody's voices heard.
That you had spoke about, these are the extra groups that they had mentioned, if there's ones that we want to see, then we would then, in addition to, thank you.
Could you repeat the foundation groups
Okay,
again?
so the foundation groups is who they will be reaching out. They're looking for other groups from us, and the foundation groups, what I heard, and Molly, if there's somebody that I'm missing, or Mr. Collins, please tell me, parents, teachers, students, administration, non-parents, community. I added department chairs because Ms. Vaughn said department chairs. And then they were going to have, and who else?
Support staff.
Support staff. And they were going to
recommend at least, and at least 2 community forums, one in the morning and one in the evening.
ability of having, because there are 4 of you, having 4 meetings at one time consecutively, and having some that will be Zoom, some will be hybrid, so giving everybody the best possibilities that we can.
Yeah, the end goal is that we want everybody to find the best fit for them and their family, where they feel comfortable and can have their voices heard.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes, so we're going to give individual names of people, is that?
What they were saying was, if there's a certain group, so say, okay, I'm just going to go, the Haitian American Club of Fort Myers.
Okay.
So if Ms. Warner, somebody says we want them to add them to the list, or a group that the Cape Coral Twisters, whatever that looks like, we then, that they possibly may miss, then we can give them those names to reach out, Cape Coral newcomers, whatever that is, or Fort Myers zigzags, whatever that group looks like.
Okay.
Am I correct, Molly?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Not about that, but something else.
Okay, so is there any other questions for the team that we have here, or Mr. Collins, as it pertains to this? Ms. Gittens?
Well, I mean, I don't think we actually finished the conversation after he said
Oh, okay, yes.
that basically they normally don't, do what we had a consensus to do, that he contacts whichever departments that he needs to contact.
Oh, it's,
and
No, he does.
not what I
do
said.
That's one contact. He's shaking his head no.
It will be defined, it will be completely kept between communications, board work, and board leadership. We're not going all over. There's
No,
just,
but I'm just, okay, that's fine.
helpful?
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Thank you for clarifying that. Is there any other questions from anyone? Oh, Ms. Patrica?
Can we have consensus that the board chair is the board contact? I think that's important for us to.
Thank you.
Out loud, say that.
Okay, we have consensus.
And can I ask on that, if this process is going through until next year in November, if we should change chairs in a new election, and how does that go? Does it stay with whoever is the board chair?
We can bring that up at that time.
Yeah.
It should just stay with the chair.
Stay with
Yeah.
the same person.
I'm just asking, okay.
New chair.
Okay, is there,
But she's got all the history and content.
Right, well, then we need to have that conversation.
we'll have that conversation at that time. So is there anything else for the team that we have here online, or Mr. Collins?
No, I just want to tell you all, so thank you for a great start. This is some of it's building of the relationship between all of us, as well as eventually bringing the community into it as legitimately and appropriately. And so we're thrilled by the start. I really want to thank particularly Molly, obviously, for all her good work. But I really want to thank Karen and Steve, because their commitment to the project is sincere. And in these kind of cases, they spend a lot of time listening, and you haven't seen the benefit of their participation, which you will see in the future. So thank you for sharing your time with us. But you have to make those final decisions, but you'll have an opportunity to make them very quickly.
Correct.
So the procedures, as we said when we started, this is procedures and timelines. We will have accomplished that by the time you conclude your next meeting, and now we begin to get, as one would say, we begin to get into the fun. Because this is really where you want to be right now.
Perfect, and we really appreciate all of you, everybody that's on Zooms. Molly, your little one as well, just for participating. Oh, no, trust me. To me, it doesn't really bother me. I hear kids all the time. But I do appreciate you sharing all your thoughts, and we look forward to working with Karen and Stephen. And Mr. Collins, thank you so much for, as I said, flying in here and being here with us today. And as we move forward, we really appreciate all that you are going to do for the district.
Yeah, we look forward to it.
Yeah, we do as well. And so thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Another thing for them?
Just real question.
Okay,
This is
hold on.
actually for us. So we're going to stick with this timeline, the dates.
Yep.
We're not changing anything on that, right?
We're going to have to approve.
Right, on Tuesday. So just what's going to come back around on Tuesday. And we're sticking with the 60-day plan, right? I would really.
That's what they preferred, yep.
Just reiterate
Yep,
that. That's
I
all
have
I'm
it.
trying to do. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
For clarification, thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
And we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back and do good of the order. Okay? Thank you. And we are returning back from a 5-minute break. And the next on the agenda is a good of the order. So I am going to start with Ms. Morgan. Do you have anything for the good of the order?
I do not.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Ms. Vaughn.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Ms. Fisher?
I have nothing right now. Thank you.
Okay. Trying to do this slowly. Well, I'm waiting for Ms. Giovanelli, but she's not here. So, Ms. Patrica?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Savage, for joining us for whatever update you can provide us regarding COVID in the district and what we're trying to do for our community and mitigation measures and communication plans and all of the questions that we have been inundating you with for quite some time now. Please and thank you.
Through the chair, I would like to respond. We've come through the first part of the year, and the Delta variant is obviously a real challenging situation. I think everyone's pretty well aware it's impacting our entire community and really our entire state, a lot of the Southeast in general. We are no exception to that. It's hit us in pretty much every aspect of our organization, but really the focus in our schools, trying to allow the learning to take place, is something that we are dealing with every single day. Also, this work since the inception of the pandemic has never stopped. So I just kind of want to clarify to make sure that our pandemic team has literally continued to work and meet. Then it's a lot of the same folks. They've just continued to modify and adjust. And so one of the things that's kind of been mentioned just in terms of media coverage of what's happened is that somehow we weren't doing mitigation efforts, or that we weren't really doing a lot of those pieces. And in fact, a lot of our mitigation efforts are even more significant than what's happening in a lot of districts right now. So I just want to kind of set that clear, because I've read a few news stories myself that just don't accurately represent kind of the work that's gone on and so forth. But just to clarify a few of kind of the next steps of where we're at, we've been in constant communication with our health providers as well as the Department of Health. We've constantly tried to be in communication with our state. I was on the phone with the Chancellor earlier today. It's just an ongoing piece to try to keep abreast of what's happening in every district and how they're navigating this surge that we are in the midst of. So some of the opportunities for us to communicate to our families and to our workers and to you as a board are the following. Tomorrow, we have a Facebook Live event that we'll be doing to try to answer a lot of the most frequently asked questions that we're getting and questions that are still there. When we have answers, we want to give them. When there are things that we're still working on, we want to acknowledge those things. Some of it's just trying to tightrope the law and how to deliver the best educational experience for our students, but also in keeping safety paramount, but to try to meet the unmet needs in our community, and as well as trying to keep our staff safe. So that Facebook Live event will address a lot of that. We also have a DAC presentation where we'll be bringing a lot of the new adopted protocols to our executive DAC group as well, so they'll have a chance to hear that. That's our District Advisory Council. That's tomorrow night. We also are working currently on an FAQ, something that will be forward-facing on our websites, that all these questions that we're getting emails and phone calls and concerns about will have nice answers that we've had medically evaluated, so that people can understand the level of work that's gone on behind the scenes to try to stay abreast and adapt to these evolving conditions. We also have a board workshop scheduled on Monday where we will be addressing all of these issues. We'll be bringing a lot of our pandemic team members in to speak, whether it's cleaning protocols, a lot of these things, just so that questions can be asked, just lots of different ways for our public to engage and to hear these answers in a multitude of ways, whether it's in writing, whether it's over a board meeting, whether it's in Facebook Live. We just really want to make sure that we can constantly communicate as much as we can, because we understand that sometimes the information that's out there is not always accurate, and it can be very challenging to keep people abreast of what's actually happening. We actually have a letter going out to students and staff that will be assigning some of these protocols. I have a lot of those in front of me. But I also have some additional staff here as well. We just that could potentially answer some questions if we want. Knowing that this was a good of the order moment, and just to try to give you an update. How is that in terms of that update? Are there specific things that you would want to ask in terms of the flow charts or the specific protocols, because there are numerous, or with the Facebook Live, the FAQ, the DAC presentation, which has specific with graphics and whatnot, and the board workshop on Monday. Would that give you the level of detail of what you're needing at this moment?
Go ahead, Ms. Patrica.
Through the chair, I'm very encouraged that we'll be having the Facebook Live tomorrow, and I think that giving your staff another 24 hours to get that stuff together. I have sent you numerous questions that have come in to me from community members, and I'm hopeful that you'll be able to address many of those. And like you said, if you don't have an answer, or if a new idea comes up, it's an opportunity to hear from the public. I'd like to ask if we could have somehow advertised that the District Advisory Council is open to the public. There is a period of time during that meeting when the public can make public comment. They can't comment during the rest of the meeting, but it is another opportunity if they can't see the Facebook thing for them to be able to get in and hear answers to questions that fellow parents might have. The only specific question I have is, you did just say that there are mitigation measures in place here in Lee County that are not necessarily in place in other parts. Could you just generally tell me what those are?
Yes, we have a few here, but then I also have a list of some of the additional ones that we are bringing back. So essentially we had measures that so essentially the way we evaluate a lot of these measures were working with medical staff. What are the most powerful mitigation measures that we have? And I'm just going to take this opportunity publicly to say the number one recommendation from our medical community across the board in terms of hardening ourselves from hospitalization or fatality is vaccination. And I understand that vaccination may be controversial in some groups, that there's a concern that the vaccinations have been rushed through the approval process, but unequivocally, to share the guidance we've been given from our health providers as well as the medical community, the DOH, the folks that we've worked with, vaccinations provide, while not a foolproof effect, the vast majority of the folks who are dying currently, as well as the most severe hospitalizations, are coming back as unvaccinated individuals. And so it's very important that I share that feedback, not that I can personally validate any of that, but to say that the medical professionals at the highest levels that have given us that feedback have asked us to just, as much as we possibly can, encourage folks to get vaccinated. Some of the parts of the community, of the country that have the highest vaccination rates are able to keep their hospitals from being overwhelmed with that piece. So I just feel it's important to use this moment in time to reiterate that is a high, significant mitigation factor, and it's a huge drop from the top, which is a vaccination, to the next highest, most recommended action, which is substantially lower on the chart in terms of what is the most effective mitigation effort, which includes things such as masking and whatnot. So I wanted to kind of highlight both the vaccination recommendation as well as the magnitude of that recommendation to the next most effective pieces, including things such as social distancing and whatnot. One of the efforts that we've never stopped doing is social distancing to the greatest extent possible. The CDC and other health measures have essentially said that even 3 feet of distance provides some benefit. That's really kind of that minimum level of benefit that you start to see. Now, 6 feet would be more desirable, but any distancing that can be done is desirable. So some of our more aggressive measures that we're putting in place will continue to add to that piece. But again, when you bring back folks to school, you have reduced staffing from the shortages. That becomes a very difficult piece. We currently have desks facing forward with flexibility for grouping of students for learning. Some schools held on to their barriers such as this. Unfortunately, our medical advisement was that these barriers really offer very limited benefit when masking is not universal, unfortunately, but they are there, and any mitigation effort that has even a minimal benefit, we don't devalue that. Assigned seating and seating charts, those are things that we've already done. That helps us in the contact tracing, which again is a huge challenge that we'll go into more detail. Hand sanitizer is still available all throughout schools, as well as students encouraged to bring their own. Hand washing, respiratory etiquette. That's a huge thing, especially with young children, teaching them how to do that appropriately. People think something like hand washing is not a significant piece, but hand washing is hugely significant. In fact, back when I was a college student, I was with the head of the CDC, was one of my professors at Florida State, and her recommendation to me of one simple thing to try to keep yourself safe through flu season: wash your hands frequently. So we underestimate the significance of hand washing. That's a huge mitigation effort as well, even though it sounds very simple. Limiting of water fountains, as well as students encouraged to bring their own bottle of water. That's happened since the beginning of the year. Isolation rooms at every school. That's essential during this time. High frequency cleaning of common surfaces throughout the student day, as well as our positive case triggered cleaning protocols. Regular cleaning of areas where food is prepared, stored, and served, as well as quarterly air filtration replacements. We still do playground disinfection at the end of the day, and students use the hand sanitizers or wash hands before and after use. School buses we do build in 30 minutes for bus drivers to clean and disinfect their runs after the morning and afternoon. What we've certainly heard is we had a couple bus drivers come in. They do have that additional time built in. So we've tried to follow up on the cases where they said that they felt like they didn't have that time. A few of those cases already we've resolved that they in fact did have that time. So as well as no visitors on campus during school hours. While we did allow for people who are adding to the educational experience, folks who are providing tutoring and things along those lines, there were no visitors allowed just for birthday parties, things like that. Now, some of the new things we'll be adding are more significant. We're bringing back mandatory one-way hallways, grab-and-go breakfast, grab-and-go lunch. A lot of these are additional structures that will, again, help harden us from some of those efforts as well. And there are quite a bevy more that we can go into more detail in our upcoming meetings.
All right, good. If I may, just one more.
Please.
So there is definitely a disconnect, as you can see from the emails that I'm receiving and the questions that I'm receiving and the information that you just provided. So I'm hopeful that tomorrow, DAC, and next week's workshop will help with that disconnect. And one of the messages that I don't know if we as a board can help to get out there is, you know, it's fine if the public comes to a school board meeting and they're spitting mad, and that's what they were last week, but it's not fine if the public goes to our schools and treats our staff that way, because it is not their fault that we are where we are. And they deserve our respect, and they deserve our kindness, and they are living this far more than we are down here at the district. So I don't know if there's a way we can get that message out, because just a little bit of kindness, a little bit of compassion, a little bit of grace when you're approaching a teacher on an issue like this, it's not the teacher's fault. It's not the principal's fault. It's my fault. Come yell at me, but it's not their fault. So I don't know if we can get that message out somehow. I received one of those automatic calls from one of my kids' schools yesterday saying essentially that, but I only received it from one of the schools. So I think that was a principal-led thing as opposed to a district-led thing, and it was a great message, just the reminder. Those are my comments. Thank you for being here again. I appreciate it.
Does anybody else have any questions? Ms. Vaughn? And then Ms. Fisher.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Dr. Savage. Some things that I've asked that I haven't gotten responses on. Okay, one of the things is obviously there are some schools that have had really, really high numbers of absentees among their teachers and other staff. Could you tell us how they are trying to fill in, and do we have district personnel going to those schools? A little bit about the logistics, and then I have another related question to that.
Yes, through the chair, I would say it is a huge issue right now from a staffing standpoint. And while it's very difficult to say whether a person contracted it here on the school campus, you know, that's part of the reason why we're increasing some of these pieces, is just things as simple as making sure that adults aren't meeting in a meeting room, you know, with a team or an admin team all being together. Because if a person becomes infected and then the others are exposed, even if they end up never showing symptoms, that creates just another hardship that we then have to cover. So I just have to really give a credit to the district staff. Any of our folks who have credentials, teaching credentials, have basically been asked to push into schools in all manner of pieces. We had one elementary school that had a number of folks who were essentially isolated or ordered to isolate simply because of an exposure. And so then that covered a whole slew of folks that had to come from down here. And so I just want to give special credit to Dr. Spiro and his team. Dr. Spiro's in here right now. but a lot of the folks in academic services who've worked in schools, and so it's not new to them, have just had to be very flexible and be right out there in the front lines and just jump in and assist. So they have just jumped right in and done excellent work to do that. We've been able to manage so far. I think the concern for us is if the surge were to worsen, if we were to see worse numbers than what we have currently, there just becomes a point at which it is not as manageable. And I think that's where we've had some classroom closures due to those types of things where enough students are exposed that the classrooms have to be closed. It's a very, very challenging time out there right now. And a lot of it has to do with the ordered quarantine piece of it. But there's also a lag. Something we haven't really talked a lot about is it's a tremendous lag right now because the health department, I would say, is probably overwhelmed as well. They're the ones tasked with the contact tracing. We as a district try to help alleviate some of that. We have folks that were supposed to help us that were also impacted negatively, and so then they could not follow up on that. So it would be fair to say that this is really an unprecedented moment for us in terms of what we're having to deal with. And I just have to credit, I think it goes back to what Ms. Patrica was saying, the level of sacrifice of what our school staffs are having to do is just so dramatic. And it just bears saying that I just, from this office, it's just so compelling to me to see people who are so dedicated to children that they continue to put, in some cases, fear aside, that they just continue while their colleagues maybe have to be isolated and the folks feel fine, but they have to be isolated based on the protocols, that others then have to pick up additional classes. The level of sacrifice that our people are doing is just so tremendous and really does bear, I think, honoring of all. And that's bus drivers, it's everyone. Our staff out there are doing great work. And I'll tell you, I've had a chance to talk to other business leaders. They've mentioned how it's impacting their businesses. I mean, I had a chance to talk to Mike Martin over at FGCU, and they're having issues in some of their dormitories and things like that. So it's impacting everyone, but I just have a particular pause for how it's impacting our teachers and administrators. The administrators are basically full-time dealing with this. I mean, it is, I hate to say that, but they are just trying to manage and fill the gaps. And it's just it's an all hands on deck moment for us. Dr. Spire, is there anything that you wanted to add relative to the administrative adjustments and kind of how they're adjusting some of these pieces, or Ms. Vaughn, I guess I should say, is that satisfactory, or would you like more information from Dr. Spiro on that?
Oh, actually, I had a related question to that, and I totally agree that it's a Herculean effort. That said, this is going to be a fast burnout, a really fast burnout. And so the two things are, number one, I know there have been classrooms closed. At what point, at what percentage of a faculty being out? And I know Pelican was on the news, had almost 1/3 of their staff out yesterday. At what point do we say that school is closed? And the other thing is, you talk about the social distancing, but the facts are that sometimes classes have to be combined, and a classroom that's already full with, let's say, 20 in an elementary classroom, because I know this is really, really hitting the elementary schools because none of those kiddos can be vaccinated. We might have 50 or more kids. And at that point, when you're combining, we lose the seats, the assigned seats for the contact tracing. And then on top of that, and these are the things I've been hearing over and over from parents, some of whom are just beside themselves because they have immunocompromised children, or somebody in the home is, and they're just scared to death. And in some cases, they are the ones that are having to notify their friends, the children's parents, saying, hey, my child just came down with COVID. They're just, and it's not all on, I mean, it's on everything. It's unprecedented. So at what point do we say, this school needs to be closed, it needs to be closed, fumigated, or even this district needs to be closed, everything, not our functions here, but for the children, for the buses, for everything, for 2 weeks. During that 2 weeks, we're going to have a chance to regroup and come up with some better ways of virtual learning for the kids that still need to be out. And hopefully over that 2 weeks, this, and I call it a spike within the surge, actually. All right, so that's the, I know that became a lot of different questions, but at what point do we just say, this school needs to be shut down? Or, I'm sorry, we have so many bus drivers out, we just can't get the kids to the school. I heard there were some buses that were running several hours late in efforts to get, and again, it is what it is, but when do we say enough, shut down, or do we?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, so I'll kind of just facilitate the first part is essentially, you know, the guidance that we've had from the state, as well as how a lot of the districts are really approaching this across the entire state, is really to look at it more surgically than wholesale. I will say, though, just prior to opening school, you know, one of the conversations I had with one of our health medical experts at the highest level was essentially, if there was a way for us to delay the start of school, if there was a way for us, because that's a conversation I'd had last year at this time with one of the same experts. And, you know, would that help us, and how would it help us? And the comment back was essentially, if you could not delay until October, then it really would have a very limited value to us. So if you were to close for a week or 2 weeks, that it really will not have the impact. And that was, again, health medical expertise. That was both last year and this year. That same answer was given. We also haven't seen that across the state, anyone take that approach to try to mitigate that. And it's probably because they've been receiving similar health medical expert advice. But I can only attest to what I've specifically asked, and that's the answer that was given to me. The way that the surgical kind of closures are really about individual exposures. Oftentimes it doesn't necessarily mean that all those individuals are positive, but that they've been exposed and thusly need to be isolated. And so those are typically what is resulting in the higher numbers, not necessarily that all of them then become confirmed cases. So it's just a mitigation effort to try to limit that exposure, hope that you don't then see the people develop symptoms and then reintegrate them following our protocols. So what we typically can do is, if we can manage at a school to keep the school open, we know how vital our schools are for our community to continue to work, for the children to receive their education. So anything within reason that we can do to supplement staffing, like the example of what I mentioned earlier with Dr. Spiro and reassigning staff to help push in and support that environment, that is preferred to closure of an entire school. Because again, just because they're in the same physical site doesn't mean that they've really been exposed at all to the respiratory side of this, particularly when things like, you know, the mitigation efforts that we're using are trying to limit that piece. And now, when we do put in these additional pieces, that should help us even more. Last year, we had extremely low secondary transmission within our schools. That was not necessarily something we expected. We really thought, bringing so many students back into the schoolhouse, we would see a lot more secondary transmission. We just did not see that. Now, this Delta variant is a totally different ballgame. The level of transmission is much, much higher. The level of infection, much higher. And there's still some scrutiny whether or not it's the level of the virulence of it as well. Is not really completely known at this time, but it's very clear that it is more contagious. So all of these additional measures are really here while we have this very high percentage of community transmission. So again, that's another piece that we haven't really talked about, is when it is widely circulating in the community among families in so many settings, it's not necessarily occurring in the schools. They can be contracting it from all manner of places. And so it's really about the presentation of those symptoms and then having to respond accordingly once exposures are identified. I'm doing my best to answer them, but I know we have our in-house expert, Ms. Stillwell, as well, who's been just a tremendous lead on there. Ms. Stillwell, can you give me a thumbs up if there's something that I'm, okay. So if there are specifics on that, we are going to go in greater detail with our protocols, the flow charts, all those things we'll be doing both at the Facebook Live as well as the DAC presentation, as well as the Monday workshop. We have a lot more time to unpack and use visuals as well. It's probably better than me trying to do my best verbally on that, but that's the gist of it.
If I may ask just one other thing, when we have so many people out, we're not going to be having the teachers at, I'm thinking now middle school, for instance, or even high school, but I'm thinking middle school right now for a reason. Lack of teachers at the door, combined classrooms, security people out, buses running late. How do we keep, and I think this might be a Mr. Newland thing, how do we keep the kids physically safe from being where they're supposed to be, not getting into fights? I don't know what happened. We saw something that was reported on an incident report and never got an answer about a teacher being injured by a student. And I mean, I am worried not just the medical, but the physical, and I understand we have parents that rely on, they go to work and they rely that their child will be at school all day unless an emergency occurs. I understand that, but in some cases with that many people out, how is teaching and learning really occur? It just worries me to no end, and I'm not trying to blame anyone because it is what it is and we're fighting, but I don't know. And I'm ready to bring up the other issue again, since we have more and more counties that are moving to that other issue about protecting our kids. But what about that physical safety when we're missing security people at schools as well?
Through the chair, I can answer at least the safety side, is that really our stance as a district is that safety is everyone's job. While we do have specialized staff like security guards, SROs that provide very specialized support, truly the number one line of defense is supervision, and that just requires staff and trying to have acceptable ratios of supervision, as well as folks who understand what the learning process should look like and trying to maximize it. And I don't want to overly dramatize the situation to say that everyone is essentially have these mega classes and whatnot. Part of the reason we want to open up some of these other areas, it'll give us access to larger spaces such as lunchrooms and whatnot, where students, larger groups can be spaced out more effectively. We had to deal with this last year, and we're still dealing with it this year. I think it's constantly a work in progress. I don't want to say that all of our schools are experiencing the high, well, when we do have a specific elementary you mentioned that had a significant portion of staff out. Most of our schools, they are just seeing proportions that are similar throughout the rest of the community. So if you go to a restaurant, there's chances you're going to find short-staffed in terms of servers, or cooking staff. Wherever you go right now, you're going to find, because of the high levels of circulation in the community, there are going to be shortages. So we're just attempting to address those in more of a surgical way. The safety piece, I would just say, it just goes back to supervision. As long as children are being supervised, the work is happening in that way, that is really our primary approach to it. If folks are shorthanded with, let's say the SROs are both out, or there is no security staff, then always we have the ability to assist with additional supplemental staff like we're doing with our district staff. So far, that hasn't been brought to my attention that we have any issue along those lines. But specifically to the one student, I believe it was the teacher, it was a special education classroom, specifically a special education student that was working with that particular teacher. So I can give you at least that piece of it. We can give you more information at another time on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher and then Ms. Gittens.
Well, I think that Mrs. Vaughn asked questions and I got more answers in listening. But I think my concern is that we have had multiple communications from concerned parents. And so I'm wanting to know, how are we getting the communication into the schoolhouse, and how are our administrators and staff managing all of this when we are in a public health emergency? And yes, it is our teaching and learning is our job, but right now, surviving the pandemic is a priority, along with the safety and security. So I'm not sure how the reality in the schoolhouse is measuring up with our plan on paper here, one thing. And then I know that our district health contact is no longer with us, and so who do we have expert and qualified to be our district health representative, even though we are continuously communicating with our local health officials and the Department of Health? So I guess those are my two questions.
Those are very fair questions. Through the chair, the first is the plan, if I heard it correctly, and reality. And I will just say that, we've tried to meet with the principals. We've done virtual meetings to try to clarify, allow for them to ask all the questions that they possibly can have, and we answer them. So we might have an hour-long meeting scheduled with them, was I think the last one, and it ended up going an hour and 45 minutes to ensure that every single question they had could be answered going through those protocols. I would be remiss if I say, that just because it's on paper and it's in the protocol that it's being implemented with fidelity. The reality is these things change, the flow charts sometimes, when we're working through it, I think everyone's giving it their level best. I'll tell you, administrators out there are trying so hard to really implement. And I can tell you that that's another reason why it's so important that our staff is out in the schools. For example, tomorrow and the next day, Thursday, Friday, I have a whole bunch of additional school visits as we've continued to do academic services. 4 out of the 5 days they're in the schools. We're all over the place to try to see it firsthand so that it gives us that boots in the ground reality check of what the schools are facing and what their unique circumstances are. I'll also say it is unique from school to school how some of the schools struggle with certain aspects of it and others do not. So we just continue to provide support. When I was out in the schools visiting, I kept running into other district staff who were there delivering resources, helping to chip in. So it really is an all-hands-on-deck moment in time, but I will say it continues to be a work in progress to try to ensure that the fidelity of our recommendations are actually being followed. You have some who are overzealous with it, in fact, and then you have others who simply aren't necessarily, whether it's through lack of understanding or whatever case, and so it continues to be a work in progress. But I will tell you, from a person to person, everyone's giving it their best shot right now. They really are, and it's a tough time. The second was the expertise. Fortunately, we do have that constant engagement with our medical experts out there. They are phenomenal. They just are always a phone call away. I'll send a text, and I usually within an hour will have a response, and then we'll have a follow-up phone call. Stillwell is every day, has calls going on. We do have a person who's standing in for Ms. Whiff, who we just absolutely love, and thank her for her tremendous service during the pandemic. But we do have someone who's kind of stepped in to temporarily assume that role while we continue to advertise for her permanent replacement. So we do have that, as well as we do have access to a number of our nurses who have some in-house medical. But we typically rely on that, as well as our Department of Health and our providers, because they are just so accessible to us, and there's such a mutual interest in making sure that we're supporting that system as well.
Okay, and who is that person?
It's, should I say the name is Vicky, I believe, is standing in, Vicky Otto? Is that correct? Yep, Ms. Otto, who kind of was shadowing with Ms. Whiff as well during the last few weeks, so that there would be a seamless time period of having at least that head contact with that piece.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Gittens? I'm sorry, Ms. Fisher, were you?
Yeah, yes, I'm fine. Thank
Ms.
you.
Gittens, please.
Thank you. And first of all, too, thank you to staff and all that are going through a lot of stress and everything in dealing with all this, and I do appreciate all that you guys are doing. And a quick example of communication. Word got out that Ms. Whiff had left, but word did not get out that this Ms. Otto was going to be moving in and taking her place. Just that simple, quick, immediate would have stopped a lot of discussion about, oh, this person is gone, so, you know what I mean? And maybe some people knew that, but I'm just saying, when we talk communication, that's a quick way to kind of stop. And I've always said, if people don't know the truth of what's going on, they'll make it up. So don't give them time to make it up, and just saying, in your announcement, this person has decided to take other, opportunities, and so will be, and make sure that that's out there, because everybody's, on edge with all of this anyway. Did you have a statement to make on that?
Sorry about that. I was only going to say Vicky's been in the COVID command center for more than a year now, so she is in her current role. They're doing interviews for Beth's position, so nobody's been named to Beth's position yet. They're doing those interviews now. So I just wanted to clarify that nobody has taken Beth's position yet. We're doing interviews for that, but Vicky is the go-to in the COVID room and has been for the past year since she's been in there.
But she's still basically the person holding down the fort until you
He
get
and
someone.
Nicole Vitale have both been in there, and then we have rotating folks through the rest of the district that are coming in, and we're looking at hiring 4 additional staff members for that COVID hotline room as well.
Okay. And my point was just communication and how.
Yes, no, I agree. I just
when
wanted to make sure that it was
And just to
everybody
put it
knew.
out there.
Thank you.
And the other thing is, the website is still difficult. And it's not that it's not a good website, but I have sat on the phone with parents and gone through step by step how to get to something. And it's, 3 to 4 steps to get to various things. And I think some people are used to, when you say it's on the banner, when you open up the site, it's there. And the issue, the way it's handled with us, you open up the site, and there's about 3 or 4 things that are major things, but when you first open it, if it's not timed just right, you don't see that. You have to sit and wait for that to roll by. And I'm just wondering, can we just have a stationary banner for, at least for COVID or for some of these things, that they don't have to? And then also regarding that, a lot of people are using a phone instead of a big screen to do this. So it creates even more steps and little places to click.
So we have responded to that. It's actually in 3 places on the front page of the website. It is in the banners that slide around. It's also stationary on the front page right under the superintendent search box with the same images up at the top. And then we've created on the icons it looks like a little thermometer, and that's the direct link to file the CIR. And all that is responsive on phones. That was part of the reason why we went with this company to begin with, is that the website is phone and iPad responsive, which is great. So we did go ahead and add that, so you can actually find it in 3 different places on the homepage of the site.
Okay, and I just think, as big as this issue is, you should be able to click on leeschools.net, and what pops up in your face is COVID, because that's what people are looking for. And actually, how soon, I know we've heard that the other information is coming up. Do you know when that's going to be out there with numbers and more information than just the X?
So to my understanding, they're working to try to finalize the dashboard this week. We did have a kind of a delay in that, but I think the end result will be a dashboard that it does, I believe, and still will correct me if I'm wrong, but it will give us by school the number of staff and the number of students, so that people can see in any given school all the way down, which I know is something that we've been working on. Is that correct, Ms. Dole? Yep.
Okay. And my last question about this is about water fountains. It was a big conversation last year about water fountains. Do we have, because last time I heard, we had quite a few that were still in storage or whatever at maintenance. And in fact, I had gone by there and I saw them stacked up. Have we installed all of those? Because I've been to several schools and I haven't really seen it. The last part of that is, if students don't have the bottles, is that something that we can ask, community help or whatever, support for kids getting the bottles if they can't use the regular water fountain and they need one that has a bottle? How do we make sure they have a bottle so that at least they're hydrated?
I will try to make sure to have an answer to that for our Facebook Live, so that if there is that opportunity, we can kind of drum up support at that time. I just don't have it at the ready here.
No, that's fine.
We'll get that for the Facebook Live tomorrow.
That's fine. And is this my time, or you
No,
haven't
I
called
still
on me
have
yet?
my
Okay.
questions. I don't know. Ms. Morgan, did you have any questions? Okay, then I do. Okay, so my questions are, today sometime we're going to get a letter from approximately 300 doctors regarding 300 doctors signing, local doctors who are signed this petition to the board, and it all came from one doctor who, and I understand this, her daughter tested positive, never received notification. She notified the entire class herself, and still has not yet received notification that there's a positive in that class. The second was, there was one who was given permission that I personally seen to come back to school. They were given the okay to come back to school, so they returned to school, and then the next day, the mom called and said she's out because she tested positive. And I think we need to explain to the public why, because everybody believes that it's the district who is not notifying these parents, and it's not clear on who is to call them, what that procedure is from the moment that someone goes to the clinic, to the moment that they go home, to the moment that they are tested or not tested. What is that? I think they need to understand that clearly, because I will tell you, they are, and when they're talking, I think Ms. Patrica had brought that up about attacking teachers, principals. I've seen that firsthand as well, and I've seen how the looks in their face, how tired they are, how they're worn down, and it's only been 3 weeks. But because they are being attacked because of this, we need to explain, have a better understanding of how this is, and we need to make sure that we are getting it out. Yes, we're having a Facebook Live, yes, you're going to DAC, and yes, we will get this information a week later. So everybody else is getting it first, and then we're going to get a detailed one later. So we need to make sure that all that information is being put out there. I understand that restaurants are short, that's optional. This is not optional for kids. They have to go to school. There's no option there. They have to be there. And I'm sorry, and I think even us as board members, we have obligations as well. We can do something. I've been going to the schools, opening doors, greeting children, working in the cafeteria. We can do that because they do need help. There was one school, 25 staff members, they had 14 out. They only have 25, but they had 14 out. Two substitute teachers. How do they do their job when they're moving kids in? So now we're taking away that 3 feet, 6 feet, whatever that looks like. We've just now put them all together. So I just think that we really need to explain how that literally works so that people have an understanding of that. Because I know you're probably tired of hearing me every day, but I just think that we need to make sure that everybody does understand what that is, that we're trying to find more people in the district to help with that. The DOH, they don't have enough people to do that. But who, at the end, who is responsible for notifying these parents in a timely manner so to mitigate the situation that we're in? And yeah, last year we had less people, but last year we had more mandates, which we do not have those mandates this year. So in knowing that, we have to make sure that we are able to get this information out to these families as quickly as possible so they have the option to keep their children home, for the adults to stay home, whatever that looks like, to make sure that we're helping them to take care of that. So what would you tell the parents on how that works? And we have to keep on saying this over and over so they understand that, they may not be on Facebook, they may not be part of DAC, but we need to make sure that we are telling them how that works, the layers.
There are lots of layers, even just to what, you just kind of said there. I would say, I'm more of a visual person myself, and so I tend to like the flow chart concept because it's visual, it's in front of me, I can kind of see, okay, this is what happens if the person's vaccinated. This is what they're unvaccinated. Here's what they're doing if there are symptoms, if there are no symptoms. There's a lot to it. I would say with the DOH and us, It has to be a partnership. I mean, there are some cases they're overwhelmed, and some cases we're overwhelmed. I would just say it is the numbers of people that we are trying to involve in the process. We're constantly trying to add more people to it, just because we need the time it takes to fill out the forms, to process the forms, to make sure that those things are being properly identified. It's massive. I mean, and just to kind of put a thought on this, we are one of the most infected places in the entire world right now. And so Florida is just so heavily hit by this as we speak. And, if there's one group and 30 students are identified as potentially being exposed, were they all correctly identified? There's just a lot that has to be unpacked with every single layer of that. Did that form get processed? Then it will go to DOH. And there's just a lot to it. I think my intent is for our workshop on Monday, we're going to take one of those pieces and just kind of walk people through it step by step so they can understand exactly what that notification process is to look like, exactly how that form is filled out. To me, having that visual there where you can kind of follow along and say, this is what it's supposed to look like in our school, would I think help a parent understand how the process is supposed to perform. The challenge that I would say is it isn't always performing the way it is intended to perform, and some of that is just due to the shortages of staff. And by the time they get to it, it is lagged. That's one of the challenges. Some states like Texas, for example, they basically took a different stance of if they weren't showing symptoms, they weren't going to quarantine. Just by isolating and quarantining, that's what really creates and necessitates that chain of series that's happening. And we're not the only ones dealing with this. This is a statewide issue that we're really dealing with. It's just because we're such a large system, it's just impacting us very heavily. So, Ms. Stillwell, did you want to add something to kind of what I've said at all, just to try to help clarify some of this piece?
And I'm wondering,
she's
too.
lived it firsthand.
Yeah, and
every
I get
day she
that.
lives it.
And I thank you too, but also, Ms. Stillwell, if you think about this as well, is that something that we could do in a press conference where it is on all the news media so they understand what the roles are and how we are doing this, so they understand it comes from the school to the district to the DOH back to the schools and then back here, so they understand what that method is, so they're not all distraught over who's going to contact them, or is it us, because they don't know, so of course they think it's us.
So I do have, actually, that is in our, the presentation that I'm creating for tomorrow's Facebook Live as well as DAX. It literally has a 6-step process. So Dr. Savage actually did a fantastic job of explaining. The only thing that I would help to use to put into perspective is when you take last year from August to December, we had 10,000 CIR reports filed. When you take day one of the school district, August 10th through yesterday, almost 6,000. So in a 13-day time span, we had 6,000 reports filed, where last year in a 4-month time span, we had 10,000. So it is incredibly overwhelming, and the schools are overwhelmed, and we are overwhelmed, and the DOH is overwhelmed, and we are doing our best to process those reports. The process itself is pretty easy when it all comes down to it, but that's provided that the information that is being submitted on the form by the parents and the community members is correct, and then what we're getting from the schools is correct, and then what we're sending to the DOH is correct. So there are a lot of layers to that, but we are working really closely together with our DOH partners. They've identified at this point, I believe it's at least just 6 contact tracers for us, up to 11 that are coming out of their pocket just for the district. We met with them last week, and we're actually going to embed some of those contact tracers in the COVID hotline room, so that as opposed to having to go through a phone call or an email or something, that we literally will have people right there to be able to say, hey, what should we do in this situation, in order to try to make those turnaround times be what they should rather than what they are right now, which is definitely delayed. I think the last that we looked at, there were still about 2,500 reports that we needed to process here that hadn't even made their way to the DOH yet, and then that's on top of what the DOH is already backed up doing. So that is something that we are looking at doing by adding that staff. We have staff that's coming in after hours right now that we're paying supplements for. Many people are working the 12 to 16-hour days to process it because we know it's a problem.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens, head. And then Ms. Fisher.
The question I have is, the hotline, for example, is that something we tell people if you have a question, call the hotline. And what does the hotline actually do? Do you call there if you think that your child has it, or you have it, or what? What does the hotline do?
They've gotten all of those phone calls and above. And if they can't answer, then we try to get answers. If they have a question about a return date, we take their name and number down. We try to call the DOH to get the return date. I mean, they're processing all of those questions. What do I do if my child is symptomatic? What am I doing if the child just tested positive? I'm an employee, I'm vaccinated, what am I supposed to do? All of that stuff is handled by the folks that are in that.
So since they're so overwhelmed right now, it's not something that you really want us to say, okay, just call the hotline, right? If we have, which we get all the time, questions and phone calls, and what is our first thing that would be easiest and most expeditious that you would want us to do? Where would we send, besides, their school is overwhelmed. They're
Right.
probably secretaries covering a class, so.
And I think we really are trying to take the onus off of the schools and to do as much as we can here in the district to help the schools. So
Right.
if they need to talk to somebody, the COVID hotline would be the number one. We presented and I've sent out and you all received, but even on Friday night when you received the flow charts that you have, they've already been updated twice this week. So new flow charts have now gone out to the schools. And that's based on the direction that we're getting from the state surgeon general, which came in, as you all know, on a few days before school. But then guidance came back last week, and then I'm understanding that they had another meeting just this week that's going to update the guidance. So it's just a matter of us trying to keep up with everything that we're being asked to do and the rules that we need to follow, and then getting that information out. So I have a lot of principals who are like, can we post this flow chart on our website? Yes, absolutely. It's already on our website. How can we be better? We're trying to use social media to be able to send out information. We're trying to use our website, obviously, to send out information, Facebook Lives, those kinds of things. And so that's what we're doing. And I believe that we are using a lot of media as well, because I know Rob in the communications office has been fielding many, many calls from local media and trying to explain and share, I think, Debbie, what you specifically were asking about.
Okay, two quick things. One is, can the phone calls be done remotely? At least taking information. And the reason I'm saying that is, if there are, let's say, teachers or someone that want to, after school hours, and they want to be able to help to take some calls, or they could do it as a part-time like call center, can they take calls remotely? That would kind of relieve some of that pressure.
So-
And basically just information taking.
I believe that we are doing some remote during the day, because when we have calls with families who are Spanish speaking, we have people in the district that we then send those calls to who are helping. So, yes, I think we would be happy to take any volunteers. There would be a bit of a training process we would want them to go through first, because they obviously would need to know how to answer those questions, and so we would need to put them through that. And I believe, Jess, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Vicki trained like 13 people today. Yeah, so Vicki was training at least 13 people to be able to help out in the COVID room to process reports and also take those phone calls, and she just trained 13 today.
And I'll volunteer to help if I can. If there's any way, I'll give you a
That'd be
few
amazing.
hours
Or
or
team.
something, so.
I think that you all received maybe an invitation to
Right.
not only join us one at a time at our pandemic meetings, per Kathy, but also one at a time in that COVID hotline room. If you would be interested in coming in, that would be amazing.
And if we can do remote calls, that would be good.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Then I'm gonna-
So first of all, I really want to appreciate all the incredible efforts, not only of our staff, but of our students and families in surviving this crisis. So Facebook Live tomorrow, and how have we advertised that? I mean, I would think all of our local media should be, telling people to get on. I mean, if that's going to provide information that they're going to be able to comprehend and implement.
Yes, so the plan is that we will not only notify media, but a notification will go out to all district families tonight, letting them know of that time frame. We chose noon because we figured that might be a good time during the day where if people are at lunch or whatever, they could dip in and out of that. And then the plan would be, after that is over, then tomorrow night, hoping with our new protocols, we already have a letter drafted that you'll get this afternoon, that we would then send out that link to that recording along with that communication tomorrow night as well. So they get a preview, and then they would get the link in their email, so if they can't catch us tomorrow, they would be able to go back and watch.
Yeah. And we know how hard everybody is working, and I think it still is overwhelming and, just incredibly unmanageable at this point. So today is Tuesday, so we're having a workshop next Monday. That's almost a week later. So you just said that in the last 14 days, compared with 10,000 cases last year, we've got 6,000 now. So I don't know that we can wait another 6 days to do whatever it is the plan is. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me at all. So however we can help, because we're already taking a lot of time responding to literally over, a couple thousand emails. And so we should be able to help in some way that's more productive. Even so, with the staff that we have that are out and the kids that we have that are being quarantined and out, and the delays in communication, which prompted the doctor who is bringing us a petition. I mean, we need to stop and take a real hard look and say, is there really something that we can do, spring into action? And we're not the only ones. I mean, our health system is having this issue, our businesses are. So this is, again, I don't want to keep repeating myself, and you'll rarely hear me do it. This is a public health emergency. So how do we schedule a workshop for a week down the road? It just doesn't, I can't wrap my head around it, and I apologize, and I'm not being critical, because I know how hard everyone is working, and I know how difficult this situation is. So I think that we all need to be thinking very carefully about how realistic is following the rules and the law when people are getting sick and dying.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. I'm going to go back to you, Ms.
I know you got to finish your plans so you can present them tomorrow, so I'll be very quick. When you do the Facebook Live, or when you do the explanation step by step, you said you're a visual person. Can communications cut those into small snippet videos so that when I answer a parent a question, I can provide them with the video answer as well? That doesn't take up too much extra time in asking them to create a whole new video, but it allows me in small snippets to be able to answer questions in a pointed way and in a way that people don't have to read. People are overwhelmed. It's very difficult to understand this stuff. That's it. I'll stop, and I'll wait until Facebook Live tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, I think that's an excellent suggestion. I'll certainly take that back to staff. Anything from 60 to 90 seconds that can answer a kind of a pointed question in a visual way, especially as Ms. Gittin said earlier, people do a lot on their phones. Those can be great ways to kind of link to specific answers. I'll take that back to staff. Because I think, obviously we have the long recording, but some folks won't take the time to watch the full long recording. The idea of the bite-sized pieces is certainly something that I would click on myself. We'll follow up on that and kind of see if we can work with that suggestion as well.
Thank you very much.
Say one more thing about that.
Just one more thing, and then I'm going to you for you.
Okay, all right. When you're talking about putting out the Facebook Live tomorrow, most of us have like Facebook or some media, social media. We can put the link live on our social media so that people that may not go onto the board site may be going onto our sites, and they can watch it live as well.
Great idea. Okay, Dr. Savage, thank you very much for being here and doing this. Appreciate that. And I'm going to move on to Ms. Gittins. Do you have anything for the good of the order?
I just wanted to say, it has really concerned me that our last meeting on Tuesday night, it just didn't set well with me. And I honestly think that it was done because of a miscommunication, at least on my part. On Monday, when we talked about doing a resolution as to what we could do with COVID, I, in my mind, had no thought that that meant on Tuesday doing a mask mandate. I just didn't. I had enough background information, and I think everybody up here did know that that was not a legality that, we could cross, and there were a lot of things that were involved with that. And I don't know how we went from 0 to 100 overnight. And I think it was a communication piece that could have been done better so that people weren't assuming. I did not walk into that meeting with any thought of taking a draft and voting on it in a final vote. So I think we all need to be very mindful and careful how we bring things up and really consider the impact of starting something that was, very difficult for everyone. So if we were talking on Monday about doing a mask mandate, we should have said that clearly, but we didn't say that. And that was not what I thought we were doing on Tuesday. I thought we were going to discuss a resolution. So we all talk all the time about following the law and following the rules. We knew what the rules were and the law was before we brought up any type of resolution. So I think we need to be very, very careful about doing that type of thing, and it's insightful, and we really should not be doing that. So anything else I'll bring up next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Preburner, did you have anything?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Okay. Well, seeing no other items to come before this board, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much